extinguish it. Get them out the land. It's becoming completely anti-Semitic. It's gotten really bad.
I understand, but what does that have to do with Judaism?
Was World War II an ethical war?
An ethical war?
It's becoming all about ethics. Yes.
I think it was an ethical war. I mean, it wasn't fought correctly, but
I believe it's an ethical war also. So for people that have ethics to think that the Palestinians or the age group are the more ethical group is ludicrous.
Yeah. I don't think anyone here is making that claim. I don't know how Muhammad feels about it down there. I started off the discussion speaking about a previous live I was in probably 20 minutes ago, where you have supporters of the state of Israel making no distinction between Judaism and Zionism. And I think the reason they do that is to in some way put Jews through a guilt trip, religious Jews through a guilt trip, religious Jews who are not too knowledgeable, and saying if you support Judaism, then you must support Zionism. It's incorrect. You could support Zionism, okay, and not support Judaism, and you can support Judaism and not support Zionism. The idea that it's the same thing is,
but Zionism is hijacked, just like ISIS hijacked Islam.
Well, Zionism wasn't religious to begin with.
Zionist is a terrorist organization
all right.
terrorizing the world.
All right.
I mean, you wanna get me out? You can get me out. I'm speaking the truth here.
All right. I mean, just because he's speaking so matter-of-factly, I mean, I have to drop.
I'm a Zionist, if that helps, Rabbi.
Can you define Zionism, Rabbi, for us? Because maybe it's a misunderstanding.
Okay, so Zionism has been redefined. Early Zionism, i.e. Herzl Zionism, is ultimately dead. Ultimately dead.
Which was what?
The movement essentially found by Theodor Herzl as a reaction to the Dreyfus Affair. The Dreyfus Affair was, I believe, a French officer who was in some way scapegoated, put into jail, and he felt that during the trial there were other reasons on why he was picked on, and supposedly it's because he was Jewish. So he felt that Jews would never be safe unless they had their own land. Now, he himself was an atheist. This idea, and the idea put forth in the Zionist councils were atheistical ones, of an ethnic state, an ethnic Jewish state for people who are ethnically Jewish to feel safe. That's what Zionism was. Now, did Jews throughout history dream about returning to the land of Israel? Absolutely. However, they didn't dream about establishing a country, an irreligious country, outside of the auspices of the Torah. That's what they didn't dream about, because religious people, like, why would a religious person care why would they care to support a country called Israel when it doesn't depict the biblical Israels or what they believed or the Torah? So this is where the lines get blurred. Only because people who live there happen to be Jewish doesn't mean this is a resurrection of biblical Israel. There's a distinction made. There should be it's a distinction that most Orthodox Jews make, right? However, the vast majority of Jews are not Orthodox. I would say the vast majority of Jews are Zionists, but they are in some way hijacking the religion, thinking they're doing Zionism a favor instead of making a more intellectual argument on why they deserve that piece of land and saying that God gave it to our forefathers when we don't even believe in God. And this is something that's going to be brought up more and more by people who debate religious Jews, secular Jews who love the state of Israel. Does that make my point?
No, not really.
All right, so
can I tell you, Rabbi, what I believe Zionism is?
Sure.
There's 16 million There's 16 million Jews on Earth. There's never been 17 million Jews on Earth. Don't the Jews deserve one little spot of land on planet Earth where they can be and not try to be G-sided and unalived? That's what Zionism is to me.
That's fine. Yeah, but how does that differ with anything I said?
Because you brought in the Torah and secular, religious, and non-religious.
Yeah, but I said I support the state of Israel.
I know you do.
Yeah. So how do you tie your rendition of support alongside the Torah?
Because there's a wide variety between atheist Jews and I know you don't. I'm not supposed to be ultra orthodox, but orthodox, and I think they both have a right to be there.
All right, but it's not a religious right.
Say that again.
It's not a religious right.
No, it's a humanitarian.
Oh, okay. So that's a I support Israel for secular reasons also. I'm trying to make a distinction between Judaism and Zionism.
Also, if it is actually a Jewish state, they're doing a horrible job because there's 2 million Muslims living there.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a tolerant Jewish state. Yeah, so again, it's been claimed to be a religious Jewish state. I'm just saying that you can have a state endorsed by the Torah and not be religious. That's the point.
It's a sanctuary. I think this is the best, a sanctuary where all over the world, because of the diaspora, there's Jews everywhere, and I didn't know this until after October 7th and learned it. I didn't know there was every color of Jew on earth. That Jews come from almost every continent, every country on earth. I never knew that before. So you have to have in Israel. So there's people, so that people can come there whenever they're persecuted everywhere else. It's essential.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know about that. I mean, this idea, from that perspective, I would say that Zionism has failed because Israel is probably the most dangerous place for Jewish people to live in nowadays. Israel is. Jews are a lot safer in America.
Well, for now, hopefully the college protests and everything don't get out of.
No,
and
in general.
Keep talking about this, but I was going to. The reason I had a few different questions that I don't know. Can you explain to me the difference between the Septuagint and the Masoretic text, or we can keep talking about Zionism, whichever you prefer, sir.
That's fine. Yeah, we could talk about the Septuagint. So that's what was it? Was it 250, 255 before the Common Era? The Ptolemies petitioned a translation of the 5 books of Moses into Greek. So they took Septa. Septa is 60, right? Or is it 70? I'll go with 70. It took 70 scholars, put them in different rooms, Jewish scholars, to translate the 5 books of Moses. The legend is that they both ended their translation with identical copies, right? It was supposedly this miraculous thing. That is what the Septuagint was. After the fall of Jerusalem, once they translated the whole Tanakh into Greek, they may have translated it even, because I know Philo Judaism had a version of it. Like all of Tanakh into Greek, they started calling the whole Tanakh the Septuagint, but the Septuagint is just the 5 books of Moses. How does that differ from the Masoretic text? So the Masoretic text, also known as the Aleppo Codex, was made famous in the Jewish world as the standard to make Torah scrolls from because of Maimonides. Maimonides says that it's the most accurate version. It's called the Masoretic text, not that it was written at the time of the Masoretes, but Masoretic means from the Masorah. That means the tradition. They held the tradition of having the most accurate version of, in that case, Tanakh. It wasn't just the 5 books of Moses. And that's what we follow nowadays. But there were other texts that really didn't differ in any laws, but they may have had an extra word here, like a minus a letter there. But yes, nowadays, Torah scrolls are written off this standard known as the Masoretic text. We have older versions, or at least fragments of them, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I haven't even heard that there was a difference in there, but there may have been. For sure, in the prophets, there's differences in the, let's say, in the book of Isaiah that appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the book of Isaiah we have nowadays, there's differences. I don't know if that answers your question.
I'd like to add that the Masoretes,
Yeah.
The Masoretes added the Nikudot system.
Yeah.
With the vowels in Hebrew.
Yeah. Well, they added
So the Septuagint was written in 250 BC.
I was speaking off the top of my head. Maybe. I think it was translated.
That's okay.
You can look it up online. Yeah.
So then, the Masoretic, did they take the Septuagint and add the vowels and dots or whatever? I don't speak Hebrew. I apologize.
Yeah. We don't know. It's all tradition in terms of what gave birth to the Masoretic text. we don't have a complete Torah scroll from the time of the Second Temple, a complete Torah scroll intact. So it's all theory.
So after the fall of Jerusalem, 70 AD, what was left to make the Masoretic text from?
So from Jerusalem, the scholars in Jerusalem, the members of the Great Court, which would have been responsible for sanctioning any standards of writing Torah scrolls, they moved over to Yavne, which is probably, I don't know, by car, it's like 2.5 hours from Jerusalem. And there was a vibrant community in the north, and scholarship still existed in the land of Israel till at least 135 of the Common Era, where like the Jews were expelled fully, although Jews always lived in the land of Israel. So yeah, that's the bulk of we know according to rabbinic writings.
So there were scrolls. There was a Septuagint outside of Jerusalem, so not all of not every copy of the Septuagint burned in 70 AD. There was another location that had a Septuagint up until 135, the Bar Hakva revolt thing.
Yeah, I don't know where you're reading that the temple was a place where they held scrolls, because it doesn't say that anywhere. There was a commandment on every Jewish person to write a Torah scroll for themselves. Yeah. So I mean, the temple could have been burned down. As a matter of fact, even at that time, the vast majority of Jews lived outside of the land. There was probably a larger religious community in Alexandria, Egypt, than there was in Israel. Every synagogue had a copy of the Torah, and the prophets. Oh, and the prophets after, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Next question.
So when was everything combined back again? Would that be if every different village has a Torah, do you think they're all 100% correct? They match each other 100%, and then the Masoretic text, when was that, like 800 or 1000?
Yeah, the Masoretic text is just one. Hold on, there's an echo there. It's one rendition to combine all the Hebrew scriptures in one with nekudot, which is the vowel points. But I would say that virtually every Torah scroll, with the exception of the Samaritan Torah scroll, has all the commandments intact. The Samaritans add an extra law. I believe there's only one law, that we should worship on Mount Gerizim. So only because you may have a Torah scroll in one community that has an extra letter or possibly an extra word, it doesn't change the command in that Torah, which is what makes the Torah exceptional. Not that every Torah has to match verbatim, but in terms of the contents, the concepts have to match. I mean, Torah means instructions. As long as the instructions are intact, then it could still stand as an exceptional work of ethics.
Okay, thank you for explaining me that. I'll sit here on silent. The next person can ask a question, and I had a couple other ones.
All right, I don't know if they have any questions left. Bree, will you have a question, Bree? No, Bree makes statements. I mean, she doesn't really ask questions. She's a strong woman. See, now she's staying quiet on purpose.
The other gentleman, do you have a question?
No, go ahead, Fish. Yeah.
So, I've been coming on here for a few months now, and I've been doing research and coming back and talking to you, and I greatly appreciate it. One thing I've learned that I think many Christians don't know, and I don't know how many Jews know this also, is so the year 30, when Jesus was unalived, after that, the followers of Jesus, known as the Way, went to temple, and all the way through 70, and Jews and Christians, they weren't called Christians, they were called Jews who followed Jesus, went to the same temple on Sabbath, and then the ones that followed Jesus on Sundays would get together in people's houses. So that there's always been a relationship, and we should be best friends. And it really bothers me whenever Christians attack Jews or Jews attack Christians, I was on a live earlier this week, and it was just awful, back and forth. And I think we need to, as Christians, we need to love our Jewish brothers and realize that Jesus would not want us to have any ill will towards our Jewish brothers. And on the Jewish side, for at least 40 years, maybe 100 years, it was okay that you could be a Jew and believe in Jesus. And instead of, well, Jesus wasn't the Messiah because of this verse and that verse and this verse and that verse, just accept each other and live happily.
I agree. I don't know if I agree with the idea that they should just work together. I mean, I think if they keep Torah and identify with Israel, they should be indistinguishable from other Jews. When you read the Torah and you believe in the Torah and accept the Torah in your life, i.e., you become Israel, then that land belongs as much to you as it does to any Israeli living in the land of Israel, because the land is promised to those who keep the Torah. So don't feel like you're supporting the state of Israel. As a matter of fact, I think the best way to bless Israel is ultimately by becoming Israel yourself. That's it. This idea that it's us against them, nonsense. We're all in it together. If you believe in the Torah, okay, you are Israel. It's not, us and them. It's us, right? It's Israel. So don't think that that the rabbinate or the state of Israel gets to decide who's to be called a Jew. The Torah decides who's to be called a Jew, i.e. Israel. That's it. So that's my message in every video that I put forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think, even in Islam, Christianity, Judaism, all using the same, five books? And, it's basically a law for men to live by. If you think about it, in the past, there was child sacrifice and, sin and anarchy, I like to say, and a lot of illiterate people. The Bible is the most sold book in history. And it talks about establishing a government and everything that's good that man should take into civilization, into their their beliefs and core. So that's something that we all share.
So let me see, if we can't fish people out of the audience with a statement. We started off this show trying to make a distinction between Judaism and Zionism, how you can support Israel, the secular state of Israel, however, make a distinction between that and the Torah and what we call Judaism, which ideally should be what the Torah endorses, but not always. And for some reason, people on TikTok who support Israel feel that they have to include Judaism in that, meaning that if for some reason you happen to differ, let's say, with Israeli policies, then you're differing with Judaism. That's a problem. That's a problem. This idea that you're going to hijack your religion for political reasons, there's some Catholics that don't support the Pope. I'm sure there are many Catholics who say, well, you're not Catholic. I think this is like the Mel Gibson group. So I think we should be able to walk and chew gum. This idea that only because something doesn't align perfectly with the Torah, that means that you can't support it, is really antithetical to our job in exile. In exile, we're supposed to appreciate people who are tolerant. Right? I mean, God says that he's sending us into host nations, that we should pray for those nations, build houses, i.e. appreciate that they're being tolerant to let us in. From this perspective, we can appreciate India over Pakistan and Israel over Gaza. With who's the most tolerant, who do we share more values with ethically, not religiously, in terms of practice. I'm sure keeping kosher and stuff, we probably share more practices with religious Muslims than we do with secular Jews. But on the more important commandments, I think we align more with Israel.
something just popped in my head. If there is a third temple, doesn't that mean? And I've asked different people, and I got different answers. If there is a third temple, doesn't that mean that animal sacrifice has to come back?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We can't do anything contrary to the Torah and claim to uphold the Torah, right? Because then we're picking and choosing what Torah is more convenient and what Torah isn't. So the Torah never makes a... Yeah.
How do you think Pete is going to deal with that if that happens?
It's funny. Probably the majority of the people in Peter are probably Jewish. A sacrifice is nothing but a barbecue in the vast majority of cases, right? I mean, even when we slaughter meat today, we say the same blessing that they would back then. And the meat, the vast majority of the meat that was sacrificed back then was eaten by the priests. So what's the difference? What's the difference between sacrifices and a barbecue?
Because it'll be a ceremony. It'll be a ceremony at the temple, correct?
Yeah, only because you're barbecuing in one location versus another.
Are you Jewish?
No, sir. But I love my Jewish brothers.
I'm talking about the host.
Yes, I'm Jewish.
Sorry.
Mr. Rabbi Asher, are you Jewish?
Yes, I'm Jewish.
What are your 10 commandments as a Jew?
My 10 commandments as a Jew?
Yeah.
I mean, be more specific.
What are the 10 commandments?
All right. So, being that you're calling them 10 commandments tells me that you're not Jewish.
You a simple question. What are the 10 commandments?
Okay. So, there are no 10 commandments. There's a Seret HaDibrot. Hold on. The reason I know that you're not Jewish because a Jew.
You're saying there are no 10 commandments.
Yes.
So does that mean Jews don't believe in 10 commandments?
No. The Seret HaDibrot doesn't mean 10 commandments. There's 10.
I'm talking about the 10 commandments.
Again, I'm saying it in Hebrew. Seret HaDibrot means the 10 statements.
10 commandments.
Forget it. I mean, what's your question? Just get to your point. You don't know enough about Judaism to grade me. Go ahead.
You beat around the bushes. You like to beat around the bushes, and you know the truth. You are a Zionist. Save Jews from Zionists. That's all I got to say.
All right. It's silly.
Come on, bring it.
I mean, you missed everything I just said. I'm making a distinction between Judaism and Zionism. Hold
I
on.
love my brothers, my Jewish brothers and sisters, supporting Palestine.
This isn't the panel. We don't do that. We don't do that on this panel. This is a religious panel. If you want to talk, I will not be quiet. And will not disrespect the rabbi.
No, you could. I mean, forget about the title rabbi. By the way, like I don't care. I don't want them disrespecting anybody.
Rabbi,
I don't think he's listening to the conversation.
now, Rabbi, didn't I just tell you that it wouldn't matter? Even though you're separating the two, he's still going to see you the same if you have any.
I understand. However, I'm not going to check my brains at the door and call something what it's not. Yeah, I have to make an attempt for some level of authenticity. And I'm trying to define terms properly. Whether it confuses people at the end, the idea that we should push an idea that Judaism is the same thing as Zionism when it's incorrect just because it gives them ammo. Heck, I mean, we stand on truth. Anyways.
Judaism definitely not Zionism.
Well, okay.
Judaism is beautiful. Zionism is very bad. Very bad.
So you can't make statements like that. Like, you have to explain.
Yes, I would explain it. It's easy to explain.
Right,
Zionism is based on race, ethnocentric, the sovereignty of the Ashkenazi Jews, not the rest.
I'm a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant from America, and I'm a Zionist, so everything you're saying is not true.
Okay, hold on.
That's your wish to be a Zionist.
Okay, hold on.
Be accepted as a Zionist.
Hold on. I want to have a dialogue. So you said that Zionism is built on race and ethnicity, but the Zionist movement in Israel accepts converts.
Theodore Herzl.
It's like Islam. Islam also accepts.
Hold on. Theodore Herzl, Jewish State, page 12, and you'll find out what Zionism is.
Oh, all right. So you're making a distinction between Zionism today and Zionism back then.
So you're gonna go to Zionist today and not back then? It's built on the same thing. The
all right.
foundation is the same.
I know, but the state of Israel. Here, listen.
Let me just explain something, and you can go ahead and talk. I mean, I was raised around Jews. I love Jews. Don't get it twisted. I'm an Arab, but I'm a Moroccan. So we know Jews. We lived around Jews. Not not Zionist. I mean, some of them like.
No, I know. Yeah, but you're ranting now. Hold on. Okay,
so the Christian who claim to be a Zionist, they just wish to be a Zionist. You know, it's
yeah. You're making these statements. You have to break them down. I'm trying to break down these arguments. I mean, just to really understand your point. So you do acknowledge that if a Moroccan tomorrow converted to Judaism, let's say, the Zionist state would embrace them as fellow ethnic Jews and their brothers, and there would be no they wouldn't distinguish between someone with an Arab past and someone with the Asian past. All right, how do you explain that?
Absolutely not. You can never be a Jew unless your mother is Jewish.
See,
and you can never be a Zionist unless you're a Jewish.
All right, so this is going against everything. What are you talking about? I know, but that's lying. Hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're familiar with Ivanka Trump, right? That she converted to Judaism. Right?
Okay.
Marilyn Monroe, Sammy Davis Jr., Elizabeth Taylor. People convert to Judaism, and the state of Israel recognizes them as Jewish. So how could, in the Bible, people become Jewish who don't have a Mosaic pedigree. So how do you explain that?
Very good. Ivanka Trump, that's a politics, that's money, that's power. Why don't you choose like a regular people? Like if people, let's say I'm an Arab American, such as myself, from a Muslim background, Moroccan Muslim background, and I want to be a Zionist. I will never be a Zionist. I will never be Jewish, matter of fact.
No, I know, but if you wanted to, could you?
I said if no, you can't. You'll never be. It's a state that is based. No, you can't. You cannot. It's a state that is based on ethnic. You have to be a Jewish.
Right.
If you
see
are
this?
a Jewish,
hold on.
You can.
This is an Israeli passport. Hold on. This is an Israeli passport. All right.
That's great.
That's me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't born Jewish. Hold on. I converted to Judaism.
Don't dox yourself, bro.
No, everybody knows who I am. It's no secret. Okay. I wasn't born Jewish. I converted to Judaism, and the state of Israel gave me citizenship. So
that is debatable because I cannot verify that. But let's say for the sake of argument that is true. Wouldn't that be a wrong thing to do? That you are accepted just because you follow a certain religion. You don't find that anywhere in the world. You can never be the Saudis will never accept you as a Saudis, even though if you're a Muslim, because they'll accept you only if you were born there. You fit certain criteria. You were born in the country. Even that should be true. It's still wrong.
That's because of mineral rights. That's because of mineral rights. They wouldn't want you to become Saudi because then they'd have to pay you.
I'm just saying. I'm not giving you Saudi Arabia as an example, or Japan for that matter, or United States.
I mean, if you marry a Japanese citizen, that you could become Japanese, and I'm pretty sure it may apply in Saudi Arabia as well.
Brother, anything that is based on ethnic, on religion and ethnic, is not good, and that's exactly what Zionism is. It's based. You could be a Jewish born in Himalaya, and tomorrow. You go to Israel and you become an Israeli. And if you're not Jewish, following the Judaism, the Jewish religion, and you're ethnically Jewish, you can never be an Israeli. And that's wrong. That's wrong at every level nowadays. So that's my point. I'm listening to you guys. You're wonderful. I like the conversation, all that stuff.
You're just making statements. You're not really asking any questions, and those statements are a bit baseless.
Yeah, I was listening. No.
Okay. All right. So I'll tell you why that statement is baseless. I am the first person to make a distinction. Hold on. Just let me respond.
But if you say that you're a Christian and Zionist, that's just like a Christian who wish to be a Zionist, but they will never be a Zionist. You can never be a Zionist.
You realize Muhammad was an Ebionite, which is a Jewish Christian. You know this, don't you?
Who's Muhammad?
You're Muhammad.
Oh no, I don't. I'm not doing Muhammad and Moses.
No, if you want to talk about Jews being accepted and not accepted in Saudi Arabia, you need to start with Muhammad, who was a Jewish Christian.
All right, okay, but let's not even go down that rabbit hole. Listen, the state of Israel has a religious segment within it. It's called the Rabbinic. It's in charge of all the religious affairs of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. I make a distinction between the secular state of Israel and Judaism. However, there are many religious Jews in the state of Israel. in order for Judaism to even make any claim to represent the Jewish world, they would have to accept converts. There are many Jews who are married to converts. So the state of Israel allows anyone converts to Judaism to become a recipient of the law of return. This is just a fact. This you can't change. Not to mention that Judaism has accepted converts from its inception. It was founded by converts, right? The vast majority, at least according to the rabbis, of those who stood on Mount Sinai were of the mixed multitude. Just like you could convert to Islam, you could convert to Judaism. It means Judaism was universal from its inception. That being said, we still have to make a distinction between the secular country called Israel and the biblical nation of Israel. But everything else you said is kind of misinformation.
But based on what you're saying, that do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Based on what you're saying, the founder of Zionism were secular, and yet they were Jews.
Right.
You can't have your cake both ways. It doesn't work like that. You said Judaism is a religion, but the founder of Zionism were secular. They have no religion. That includes Benjamin Netanyahu to the very day. They are secular. You can't just use the religion when it fits your purpose.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you there. No one's disagreeing. Yes, the founder of secular Zionism, Theodor Herzl, was an atheist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then okay. The founder of Israel. You said Israel is you just have to convert and become. But convert to what? They're secular, so religion shouldn't matter.
No, there's a religious segment of the government that they're in charge of.
That's a new one because the founder are Ashkenazi Jews. Remember, the rest of the Jews, they were Middle Eastern.
Ashkenazi Jews are religious also.
No, I'm sorry.
There are religious Ashkenazi Jews, just like they were religious Sephardic Jews.
Not the base, not the founder.
Oh, the founder of the country. I get it.
Yeah, okay. The founder of Israel. So Israel, to begin with, was not based on religion.
I know.
All right, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying, oh, well, you have to convert to Judaism, and you can become a Zionist, and then you become.
No, I'm saying that the state of Israel would accept you as a Jewish person and a Zionist, even if you have an Arab background, if you converted to Judaism via the Rabbinic.
Israel is based on secularism. That shouldn't count. See,
no,
it's contradictory.
There's a religious segment of the government, right? You can't. There's way too many religious Jews in Israel for the religious people not to have a claim to anything. There's religious parties in the Knesset that, in order for Israel, for them to want to live in a country called Israel, they would have to tolerate religious standards like kosher food in the army, right? Like buses not running on Shabbat, like on the Sabbath, at least in Jerusalem or religious places. So there's certain conditions that secularists make for religious people, just so religious people could tolerate their existence. And this is one of those things that converts are accepted as citizens of the state of Israel, and they make no distinction between a convert and a native-born Israeli.
Okay. I don't know. I've never been to Israel myself. I don't know.
Well, you could convert to Judaism, by the way, and you could be there waving flags with all the other Israelis, and they wouldn't look down on you because your background is.
As a Muslim, our religion have the basis of Judaism sewn in it already, so I don't need to convert to anything. But that's another subject.
Just in case you wanted to, just in case.
Yeah.
I mean, just like I could convert to Islam, right?
Yeah. All right, you guys are wonderful. I'm eating my breakfast right now. I'll be listening. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Shalom.
Okay, next topic. So yeah, a healthy distinction between synagogue and state. Right? In America, we have a separation between church and state. There should be a separation between synagogue, shul, and state. Which I would say the vast majority of people who defend Israel on TikTok fail to make. It's a lie that Judaism is an ethno-religion. Judaism is not an ethno-religion. There's an ethnic component to the Jewish people. That's not the same as saying as the religion is in any way ethnic based or ethnically based. Let's see.
Yeah, I agree. The theocracy is definitely not. They kind of pick and choose and what to put in the Jewish state.
It's not limited to blood. Judaism is not limited to blood. Yes, there's some positions like the priesthood that was tied to a family. That doesn't mean that the religion depends on blood in any way. Judaism could still flourish and move forward without a priesthood. The idea that the land of Israel belongs to Jews is contrary to the Torah. The land of Israel belongs to whoever keeps the Torah. It's the Jews who keep the Torah, right? Not every Jew, but the Israelites were the nation that made a covenant with God, that God would be their God, and they would be God's representatives on earth. Yes, the land of Israel belongs to them. Being that we're not there today, we tolerate the state of Israel because we feel that it does a lot better with that piece of land than Muslims would. Just like I support India, I share more values with Indians than I do with Pakistanis. That doesn't mean I'm a Hindu. I think this is a healthy distinction that has to be made.
Especially if you look at history and the pilgrims that would visit Jerusalem, you would see that they weren't safe, whether it be Islamic or Christian or Jewish. If you wanted to go visit the Holy Land throughout history, the chances of you being unalived were really high. Now, since the Jewish people have taken over as, the guardians of Israel, you can go as a American citizen, being Christian, rent a car, tour the Holy Land, and you probably will not be, you will do it in peace and have a good time.
I'm pretty sure it was safe under the
safe.
and for anyone who wasn't Jewish, by the way. Welcome, Benjamin.
Yeah.
Hold on. I want to see what Benjamin wants to say.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
I do have my personal opinion about the Eretz Israel. According to the Torah or the Tanakh, Eretz Israel was given to Israelites for some reason. We call Midah Kenedek Midah. Okay.
Measure for measure.
That's the Torah says. Okay, that means says I have a question for you. In the Talmud Bavli, in the Sefer Pirkei Avot, which was introduced to the Talmud Bavli in the 500s probably, says the oral Torah was given to the Moses by HaKadosh Baruch Hu until he transmitted until the Rabbi Yehuda HaNazi. So my question to you is, do you think it's oral Torah or is it oral tradition? Because if it's oral Torah given for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we better listen because it's the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if it's oral tradition, of course we respect because, it's discussion between the Rabbinics and the Talmud. So what are your thoughts about it?
This is a good question. It's a bit complicated to explain, but I will try. First, I have to start off by asking you, what do you consider oral law or Torah Sheba'al Peh specifically?
Well, personally, I read the Talmud. I studied Talmud. I think for me, it's not an oral Torah. It's a tradition. It's a teachings. We can say that, that the Torah is a teachings, education. Okay.
The oral law, I mean. Torah Sheba'al Peh. What's Torah Sheba'al Peh for you?
Well, for me, it's a tradition. Traditions.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so there's a big debate of what appears in the beginning of Pirkei Avot. Also, the Rambam in his Hakdama to Mishnah Torah also lays down the tradition that was being passed down from Moshe Rabbeinu all the way, not to just Yehuda HaNasi, but even beyond. He even includes Geonim. Unfortunately, it's weird how he lays it down in his Hakdama. There's one opinion that what they were passing down wasn't what we call today Torah Sheba'al Peh, but the 13 principles of exegesis. So the 13 principles of exegesis is what the Sanhedrin used to be able to extract halakha from Torah Shebiktav. And this appears in a set of books called Midrashei Halakha. And these are books, they're lumped into what's called the Baraitot nowadays. So it's a Sifra, the Sifri, and the Mechilta, which are, the word Midrash means from the Drash, from the actual Torah. The principles on how to establish that. We can't say that the whole oral law was given on Mount Sinai, because what you would be saying is that even the lighting of Hanukkah candles was given on Mount Sinai. Reading the Megillah was written. you're given on Mount Sinai, and every takana and every gezerah, which also falls under Torah Sheba'al Peh, it makes no sense. I know that the vast majority of Orthodox Jews nowadays teach it like that. But like everything, they'll even include the teachings of their rabbis that was given on Mount Sinai. They'll teach the Zohar was given on Mount Sinai. It's very dangerous because it gets you to justify ideas that aren't there. So that's why I started off by asking you, what do you consider Torah Sheba'al Peh? So the Rambam says that what he considers Torah Sheba'al Peh is the interpretation of the mitzvot. Right? I mean, he says that when it gives over the mitzvah, it says mitzvah zeha perusha, that it's the interpretation to the mitzvah, which goes back to the idea that it was the 13 principles of interpretation of exegesis that was given on Mount Sinai and passed over orally. That's also a statement of faith. And there's another category called halacha l'Moshe miSinai, which the Rambam limits it to around 30 laws that must have been given on Mount Sinai, according to him, because there's no debate, there's no machloket in the Talmud regarding these laws. So it's not a science. I wish it was. However, if you wanted to go back to what the Torah has to say on the issue, the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvot, which is his book of commandments, tells you the source for believing in the oral law. He also writes this in the first chapter of Hilchos Mamre. And he says it's Deuteronomy chapter 17. He says that Deuteronomy chapter 17 tells the Israelites that in all areas of dispute, they shall go to the place that God will choose. So this place was called the Lishkat HaGazit. It was on top of the Temple Mount. And this is where the Sanhedrin sat. And he makes a statement. Beis Din Agadol, Sheber Yerushalayim in Jerusalem, Hem Iker Torah Sheba'al Peh, that it's the Sanhedrin that's the source of the oral law. This is why I believe the Sadducees were also, teachers and believers in the oral law, because they also sat in the Sanhedrin. That doesn't mean that every rabbinic law was given on Mount Sinai. That's just a dumbification of Judaism. The only people who teach that are people who don't know Judaism very well. And if you ask them, how about Hanukkah candles, they'll be like, well, that was given on Mount Sinai also. And then at that point, you lost everybody in the room. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we got a connection there because I got the same way to think about the oral Torah. Not everything, but certain comments about the mitzvot given in the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. Yes, it is really important. One more question, Rabbi. In these times, a lot of Bnei Anusim, they coming back to the Torah.
I don't believe in Bnei Anusim.
Okay.
As controversial as that may sound,
just because you don't believe in it, that doesn't mean it's not true.
Ooh, that's a good comeback. But they said that about the devil. Only because you didn't believe in the devil, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we have the notion of
Satan is in the scriptures. Satan is in the Tanakh.
Yeah, no, I get it. So I believe in the notion of onus rahmana patra, which means that yes, people who are forced to do something, it's not held against them. But the idea that you have a group of people who claim a lineage going back 500 years, because the Spanish expulsion was in 1492, and we should just accept them back because they claim to be descendants, but they have really no actual proof. They don't have what we call a chazaka. They don't have any documentation. I think they should just be made to convert. I understand that converts are not treated as greatly as God wants them to be treated, and this is why it's safer for that individual person to say that I was a Jew who was descendant of Moranos or Anosim or whatever, than to just convert. But we have to walk in truth when we're dealing in religion. Okay, if you don't have actual proof, then just convert.
But wouldn't you agree that the supposed Bnei Anusim, wouldn't you say that they would be open to converting to Judaism? I mean, the majority of people in the Latino world would be open to converting to Judaism. So wouldn't that be a large part of your audience that you're trying to convert?
No, I think the vast majority of people who claim to be Bnei Anusim feel that they don't have to convert. And that probably speaks for the majority of Messianic Hispanics. They feel that they're Ephraim. I mean, they've incorporated different ideas to it. They believe in the two-house theory tied to this idea that basically all, people who interested in Judaism nowadays just because they were Jewish to begin with, and only because your last name is Perez or Torres or Rodriguez, that this means that you're Jewish, because these are Sephardic names. There's no difference from a Torah perspective between a convert and someone born Jewish. There's no difference. So if there's no difference, then let's emphasize this idea. Every time someone tries to make the argument for Anosim, it's like when I hear secular Israelis try to make an ethnic argument based off the Torah for the land of Israel. It just doesn't exist. Okay.
But I think, why wouldn't you take advantage of the fact that people are interested in Judaism, they're interested in Torah, they're interested in, and I would say the majority of Bnei Anusim, I would say, yes, they are supposedly Messianic, but I would say a lot of them would be open to converting to Judaism. So why would you downplay their interest in Judaism?
No, I'm not downplaying their interest. I'm downplaying their claim.
They're all supposed to be rejected 3 times.
No, there's no law like that. There's no law to reject anyone 3 times. I get it. I've seen Orange is the New Black also. It doesn't exist. And according to Jewish law, you don't push anyone who's sincere away. If you know they're sincere, you accept them right away. If you have doubts, then you question.
You push away the Bnei Anusim if they're
I'm not pushing them away, bro. I'm not pushing them away. I'm saying they could come and convert like anyone else wants to convert. But the idea that they expect special treatment because they claim to have Jewish blood or something, that's the problem I have.
I think that it's a matter of assimilation, because that's what they're claiming. They've been assimilated into Catholicism. There's been Jews who have in Eastern Europe who have assimilated. So they're not saying, oh, I'm special because I descended from Spanish Jewry. They're saying they want to return to Judaism. The same way that you would have someone in Brooklyn who grew up a secular Jew and they want to be Baal Tshuva. They want to come back to Judaism.
Okay, so somebody's lineage has nothing to do with Judaism. Nothing. I mean, someone could be a direct descendant to Moses, and what spiritual weight does that carry? What moral weight? What Torah weight does it carry? Nothing.
Right, because you don't put any emphasis on lineage. You put emphasis on being a moral person who wants to follow Torah halachically.
Right, correct. Right. But that's what the Torah says. I mean, the Torah says that you could be a priest, and if you do such and such, you're like Karaite, you're cut off from your people. This idea that now once a Jew, always a Jew, and I'm an atheist and I'm a Jew, that was invented by Kabbalah. Kabbalah invented the idea that what makes you Jewish is having a special soul, right? And this gave birth to secular Judaism, by the way. This gave birth to what's called the Haskalah, which is the Jewish Enlightenment. People writing books in Hebrew, but they don't even believe in God. No, we have to make a distinction. We have to make distinctions. This is why I started off the show by saying that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. They're 2 different things, and then every Zionist on TikTok wants to disagree with me. For some reason, there aren't enough Orthodox Jews on TikTok to co-sign what I'm saying, but this is the typical Orthodox position.
I thought Judaism was religion according to the Torah and following the halakha and stuff, and Zionism is just a political movement so that Jews can be free in their own land.
Yeah, I agree with
think
that.
they work hand in hand. They're not opposed to each other.
Well, they are opposed to each other when one movement is irreligious and the other one is religious. From that perspective, they're opposed to each other.
Kind of like the Notori Karta, who they denounce Israel, they denounce Zionism. They say true Judaism is following the Torah, and the state of Israel needs to be dismantled because it's not a religious state.
Yeah, so I don't agree with that. I don't agree with there's a lot of religious people in the land of Israel. I think we could support the state of Israel without saying it's a resurrection of biblical Israel. I think that's the only healthy approach. The idea that we're going to allow Judaism to suffer because we politicized it and called it part of Zionism, that you can't have a religious Jew anymore disagree with the state of Israel and not be called a hypocrite or a fake Jew or something like that. Like, what does that have to do with Judaism? I would convert someone who's anti-Israel, right? I mean, I would convert someone who's pro-Israel. Like, what does that have to do with Judaism? But now, if the religious Zionists would have their way, you couldn't convert to Judaism if you don't endorse the state of Israel. That's a problem. That's politicizing Judaism.
But yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying. So I agree with you that we need to be moral people, and the Torah and Hashem is about morality and following, justice and laws. However, I think because there is a secular society, most governments, they don't endorse Jews, and there's persecution of Jews, and Jews have been persecuted for centuries. So I agree that Zionism is secular on one side, and then you have the religion of Judaism. But I think that there are religious Zionists who are not in the middle, who do not necessarily. I think that they want to serve Hashem in the land of Israel.
That's fine. That's fine. You could be a Zionist and be religious, but that doesn't mean that Zionism is a religious initiative or tied to the Torah. This idea that the Jewish people have always dreamt of going back to their land, for sure. However, they never dreamt of this fusion of secularism and Judaism. This is what they never dreamt of. Religious Jews, right? This idea makes no sense. How are you going to have a country populated by mainly people who are not religious, calling itself Israel? Anyone who reads the Torah knows that that's a recipe for destruction, because God kicked out the earlier inhabitants for breaking much, much less. That being said, I'm an Israeli citizen. I support Israel, but I try to make a healthy distinction between support for Israel and Judaism. And I would say that the average person, and by the way, the average person on TikTok or on social media who's defending Israel doesn't believe in Torah, by the way. I mean, they're just not religious. The problem is with religious Jews, stay quiet. And most Orthodox Jews don't have social media. I have social media, so I'm going to give my Haredi perspective, although culturally, I'm not Haredi. Right? I mean, I don't wear a black hat, not anymore. But I'm still religious. So I'm not going to water down the religion because of the secular movement. And that's better that the state of Israel burn to the ground than Torah be compromised. The integrity of Torah be compromised, right?
So I have a question for you. So you're saying that I know what you're saying, but so if you want everybody to follow Torah in the state, and for it to not to be a secular state.
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that.
So how would it not be an unholy state if everybody needs to keep Torah, right? That's the point.
No.
You can't tie it to Torah because they're not keeping the commandments. Am I misunderstanding?
I'm not saying that everyone in Israel needs to keep the commandments. I'm saying if they're going to claim to be a resurrection of biblical Israel, they have to keep the commandments.
Right.
Secular Jews in the land of Israel have the status of Gentiles in God's eyes. Okay. The status of Gentiles, which is fine. I mean, you could be a Gentile and be a decent person, but you don't have the status of an Israelite, if you don't even believe in God. I mean, how does that even work? According to Jewish law, yes, if your mother's Jewish, you're legally Jewish. That doesn't mean God plays by those rules. Saying oh, well, you got me. You have a Jewish mother, but you don't believe in God. You're still in a covenant with me. It doesn't make any sense.
So you're saying that the Jewish law is...
I didn't answer my question. Let me finish.
Right,
so what I'm asking is, so if they want to claim that, then that means they have to keep Torah, right? So are you telling me that also means that they're going to have to implement STOINIG for adultery, for the rainbow community? If they're gonna do it right, they're gonna have to really, really do it right. So that means all that would have to be brought back to the state if they're gonna truly claim to be that, right? Not necessarily.
I mean, that's a good point, by the way. Not necessarily. The reason why is because religious Jews have lived in the land of Israel since its destruction, and they lived there religiously. But they knew that they couldn't institute certain things because they didn't have a Sanhedrin, they didn't have a priesthood, but they lived righteously on the land. So technically, they were able to live in the land, just like when the Jews went to Babylon. There were many Jews who stayed in the land. I'm sure they still kept Shabbat and kept kosher, right? And they weren't unaliving people because there wasn't a court established. So from that perspective, they could live. This is something that's never spoken about. That means what does the Torah allow someone to do and not do when there isn't a temple and a priesthood and they want to reside in the land of Israel? That's a good question. Right?
So I guess my question is, people are still going to mess up, though. There are going to be people that are tempted to cheat on their wives. And, so how is that going to be handled now if the Levitical law commands those people to be STONED?
No.
You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. So Levitical law only allows stoning by the ruling body, meaning there's an actual court, at least for those who believe in Rabbinic Judaism, that we believe the Sanhedrin, we're the only ones allowed to adjudicate this. And it'd be like this in the Torah also. It says nega menega, between like blow and blow. That means like one person hits another person. That who adjudicates that? It's the elders. So we don't have elders nowadays. However, yes, ideally, if we would happen to rebuild the temple and figure out some way to reestablish the Sanhedrin and a priesthood, then yes, stoning would be brought back.
Rabbi, I have a question. I agree and disagree with your opinion related with the land of Israel. It is Israel, like I said in the beginning, I was given to Israelites for reasons. Okay. However, and the Sefer Devarim, chapter 30, talks about it in the days, in the Hari means, when the Am Israel will coming back to the land HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised to forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, if you do in Teshuvah Shalema, they will come from the four corners of the world. That's why the Torah says.
Right.
Also,
wait, hold on. I mean, don't move to the next point. Well, you said it right there. If they do Teshuvah Shlema, which means full repentance, right?
That's correct. That's
okay,
correct.
So that means if you're an atheist and you want to come establish a secular country called Israel, the Torah doesn't endorse that.
That's why the Torah says, I will be confirm my covenant on Israelites if you keep in the Derech Hashem and keep the mitzvot. That's what the Torah says.
Right.
However, in the Tanakh, also in the Sidurim, we have we pride. We say Mision Tipse Torah Udavar Nai Yerushalayim.
Okay.
So
that the word of law. I mean, I have to translate these things. Most people don't know what you're talking about. It says that the word of God will come forth from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, whatever, right?
Right.
Okay.
So it's really attached the land of Israel and the Torah, but we needed a Knesset Gedolah, like you mentioned, to making changes because the leaders, they got a responsibility over implementing the Torah of the land of Israel. So that's just my opinion.
All right. So where do we disagree then?
No, my point is now in Israel, it's not necessary. It's just for 25% of the people, they follow the Torah. The rest is seculars. They don't care.
Probably less. I would say maybe 10%. But it's fine.
But I would also say that maybe.
I just want to say thank you, Rabbi, for your time. And I think we're sharing a lot of things. And I'm Israel High forever. And
where's your background from, Benjamin?
I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew, and I'm Yehudi, and I'm proud to be a Jew.
No, your background, your accent. Where's your accent from?
My father is from Spain, but my mother is from Mexico.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah, we do have a lot of Jewish people in South America, especially in Argentina, Chile, and Venezuela. Venezuela was expelled for the communism regime, but we are all over the world. But one day we do Aliyah.
All right, God willing. Okay.
Thank you. I agree with Benjamin, by the way, but I would say that it's better to have the lesser of two evils, a secular state that allows Judaism to be practiced rather than having no state of Israel and anti-Semitism or Jew hatred is on the rise. And, there's all kinds of bad things that are happening in France, in America, in Germany. So if Israel did not exist, there would be a lot worse things happening to Jews all around the world. That's bad. So if you're secular, if you're atheist, it doesn't matter. If you claim Jewish, you're going to be persecuted. You're going to be scapegoated. You're going to be, punished. And I think Israel allows people to be Jewish, whether, secular or not, and for Jews to exist and to, at least there's like you're saying, 10% maybe that are observing the mitzvot.
Yeah, I'm not for the dismantlement of the state of Israel, by the way.
No, you said that it would be okay if Israel would burn down to the ground because
No, that's not what I said. Chos v'shalom. I didn't say that. I said Better that Israel burn to the ground than the Torah be compromised, right? You know how they say that the British modified the text of the Hindus, like just to make them more docile and subservient. If for some reason we're going to redefine and change the Torah to justify secular concepts and anti-Torah behavior, it's better that the state of Israel doesn't exist. However,
Right, I agree with you.
I endorse the state of Israel. However, let's make a separation between synagogue and state. Most Zionists on social media fail to make that distinction. They don't believe in God, but they say, we deserve this because, you know, like Moses or Abraham bought this piece of land. That's revisionism. And it doesn't bother religious Jews enough, you know, to speak out. And a lot of them do speak out. They speak out in their synagogues. They just don't have social media accounts like Orthodox Jews. So people think that including people who dislike Israel, that Zionism speaks for Torah. And then
it's wrong. They're wrong.
It doesn't get them to just drop Zionism. It gets them to drop the Torah. Or someone who wants to convert to Judaism but doesn't agree with the state of Israel, you know, for whatever reason, now they're going to be yelled at in some TikTok live saying that, oh, like you're a fake Jew or a fake this just because you don't endorse Zionism. That's a problem. That's a problem that has to be addressed.
But didn't you say just now that that according to halakha, if your mother is Jewish, then you're ethnically Jewish? But you said Hashem doesn't even care about that.
Correct.
So even you yourself, you agree that even according to Torah law, it doesn't matter if your mother is ethnically Jewish.
Correct. It doesn't matter.
So
Right. So then Hashem is it doesn't matter to Hashem.
No, what matters to God is being in a covenant with God. You can have a Jewish mother and not be in a covenant with God. Larry David, Karl Marx, you know, Carl Sagan, I don't know, Christopher Hitchens. These guys may be halakhically Jewish. They have a Jewish mother according to the Orthodox Judaism that they don't believe in. They're legally Jewish. They're not in any covenant with God. So why?
Right. So they wouldn't know about halakha, the rabbinic.
No, I know. I'm just trying to be
view of that.
Fair and honest to what their status is in Jewish law. According to Jewish law, if they happen to live in the land of Israel when there was a Sanhedrin, they would be unalived for not keeping the laws because they happen to have a Jewish mother. Just like people in Islam could claim to be Islamic without ever saying the Shahada if their parents were Islamic. So it's the same idea. However, a Muslim who doesn't keep the Quran or the ideas of Islam can't properly call himself Muslim, but they don't make them reconvert.
Correct. Okay, so I appreciate you answering my question. I have a technical question. So in the Torah, it says,
wait, hold on. I mean, let other people ask some questions. I think Bree wanted to say something.
Question and then shut up for
all right,
forever.
Go ahead.
So my last question is in the Torah it says on the morrow after the Shabbat you're supposed to count.
This is like a Karaite argument.
No, I'm just wondering what I don't know. I'm asking you. What do you observe? Do you observe after the feast, the first day of unleavened bread, or do you wait for the weekly Shabbat? I'm just curious. What's your view?
Okay, so the rabbinic understanding when it says after Shabbat, every holiday is considered a Shabbat, right? And it's called the Shabbaton. So that's how rabbinic what?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So that's how rabbinic Judaism starts counting the Omer. Karaite Jews wait. What do Karaite Jews do? Because this is a Karaite argument.
They wait till Sunday,
right?
To start counting.
They're both valid interpretations of it, by the way. The question is, why does someone want to go against what the majority understood it to mean when it can mean either one? So the Karaites are like, no, we know better. So the 200 Karaites that exist on this planet, you know, will like keep Shavuot on a completely different day. You know, it's like, all right, you know, like why strive to be different when it could be understood either way? That whether it's the week later or the day later. That's it.
But doesn't it also say in the Torah that you should not go according to the crowd? That if you're supposed to pursue justice, so if they believe that it's the morrow after the weekly Sabbath, I'm not opposed. I'm not saying you have to do one or the other. I'm just saying you could do both.
Okay, so it doesn't just say don't go according to the crowd. It says don't go according to the majority to do evil. We're supposed to go according to the majority to do what's right. The Sanhedrin had the authority to determine these things. Even in the time of Jesus, right? They took Jesus to the Sanhedrin because they were respected as the judges of the time. If the judges came to the conclusion that Shabbat there means after the holiday and not necessarily after Shabbat, because every holiday is called a Shabbat in the Torah, right? That's what the majority reasonably is concluding, although the other argument is reasonable also, but is not held by the majority of people. So it seems I've always viewed Karaite Judaism as an attempt to disorganize religion. I mean, it's just like, this is why Karaite Judaism was invented in around the 10th century, 9th or 10th century, because you couldn't exist. The Sadducees weren't Karaites. The Sadducees accepted the oral law because they sat in the Sanhedrin, right? You cannot live in a society without consensus, without leaders saying, this is what we're going to do, right? I mean, people didn't walk around with the Bible under their arm trying to decipher the holidays on their own. It makes no sense. So this is why Karaites typically argue with Orthodox Jews on such trivial notions. It's so silly, you know.
Yes. You can't deny the fact that there's the Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, and there's different ways of understanding the Torah. It's not. There's many ways of understanding it. It's not like everybody agrees. There's all kinds of different discussions.
Okay. So the reason that there are different ways of understanding is that during the time of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, they were under Roman occupation. That's the only reason why the Sanhedrin was split in two, because the Sanhedrin itself didn't have the authority to act like a Sanhedrin. They couldn't establish binding law on everyone. So people chose what group on the Sanhedrin they were going to go by. Some people went by Shammai, some people went by Hillel. That doesn't mean they reinterpreted the Torah. It was halakha that they were giving over. But it didn't matter what law they created, they were still under the authority of Rome. That's the only reason. Before there was Rome, there was only one Nasi and one Sanhedrin. That's the reason. It's not that because there was Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, like you could create more houses and then, you know, like everyone interprets the Bible they see fit. They could do that nowadays, but not when there was an actual Sanhedrin.
Okay, well, thank you. So to answer my question, so do you go according to the high Shabbat, the Shabbat?
Yeah, that's what everybody in the Orthodox world does.
So this is like the 5th day of the Omer for you?
I don't know. I don't remember. You know, but yes, it's.
Okay, well, thanks for answering my question.
Okay, you're welcome. David Usher Chazan, welcome.
אח שלי היקר, מה קורה? מה נשמע? מה העניינים?
Gringo.
Exactly. You see that we are on the same frequency. How are you doing?
You know, chilling. Slava Bogu. How to show.
Okay, now I'm just here to hear you. To make present. We say presence. We say in Italian, like to help you out. No, to moderate. I'm your personal moderator because here people
stretch people's brains a little bit. That's my whole contribution to this experiment we call Judaism. I'm trying to get people to think outside of the box in boxes that I think harm Judaism. And this is why I started off the discussion making a distinction between Zionism and Judaism. When I support Israel, but I don't identify as a Zionist. For some reason, that seems completely absurd to people on social media. They're like, how can you claim to be religious and not be a Zionist? Well, it's because, go ahead.
Yeah, the problem is linguistically, by the way, because the problem for everyone here, even among the Jewish society, is that Zionism as a word have multiple meanings. Okay, so it is, how can I say, it's not clear what you mean when you say you are a Zionist. Because if we say from a religious point of view, I say that I'm a Zionist, I mean that as a Jewish person, I believe that I want to stay in Zion, okay, and everything else. If you are a secular one, you mean another thing. So yeah, I heard many people like David Bar Chaim, like Rav David Bar Chaim, and others that do not like to call themselves Zionists and stuff like that, but just because the term is ambiguous, you know what I mean? It's not clear what you mean when you say that. But yeah, I'm with you. It's not stupid to support the state of Israel, even though you are not completely 100% with them from the religious point of view and all that stuff. The people just want to have the things right, leyad, okay, near their hands, like, you know what I mean? Okay, there are people here who call this generation the microwave generation. They want everything ready, like instantaneously. It doesn't work like that. You mean?
I think by combining the two, it makes Zionism look better. It makes Judaism look worse.
I know that.
Only Judaism suffers by combining Judaism with Zionism. And I get it. There's a movie called, there's the Dati Leumi movement, like the students of Rav Kook. the students of Merkaz Arav and all that stuff, where they've combined the two, but they have to acknowledge that it's a pretty creative way of combining it. The notion that God is going to use the secular to institute Yemot HaMashiach is quite, it's quite creative. This has never existed in Jewish literature. It's an argument. I lived in the Shtachim for 5 years in the settlements, and those are the people who typically live there. But it's a bit outlandish. Now, there's another movement called Hardal. So Hardal are...
I heard them. Like Datilumi with Karaite.
Yeah, right. So that's a little more complicated. I would say, honestly, that Rav Kook was more Hardal, than anything. Like he wore a spudik, which is like a type of strimal. He's not like, the guys wearing the sandals and the knit kippot that you find in Israel. So they incorporate Haredi Judaism, but these are fusions. It's fusions instead of just making a separation, saying, hey, we support Israel 100%. However, don't combine it with Judaism. The idea that now you can't be a kosher Jew unless you're a Zionist, that's when Judaism begins to suffer. And that's the point.
Yeah, but Zionism has changed so much especially in this past even couple months since October 7th. We sometimes, as much as we want to have our philosophical debates on the ground between us, the world, which is Amaratzim, they're not intelligent and they're not going to do much research. They're going to group us up, and that's an important thing to take into consideration when labeling ourselves to the public. I understand there's a lot of arguments of what Zionism means on an inner circle, but the fact is, if we're going to say we're anti-Zionists, we're not Zionists, we're already going to be grouped up with these leftist white people who are rallying pro-Palestine. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can have this debate with intelligent, researched people, but you can't have this debate. You can't say this out. The subtlety that you're trying to express doesn't really help Judaism at all, because people are not going to know
Judaism or the Jewish people. What do you mean?
I'm talking about the people in the public through your social media, specifically not non-Jewish people, and specifically people who are looking at you to basically either learn or rattle things up, or be against you or with you. Most people are unresearched in the subtleties of the history of Zionism and its relation to Judaism. So now we're being bunched up. So
yeah, but to what extent, should we whitewash meanings then? To what extent should we whitewash? To what extent should we whitewash meanings? For the sake of the bigger cause, because it's being whitewashed in some way, trying to infuse like Judaism as being Zionistic at its core, which is pretty much what these people are claiming. What the average social media guy who supports Israel will try to say, oh, my claim to the land is an indigenous one, which is the whole indigenous claim is not a religious claim. It's a left-wing claim that religious people just stay quiet, and they stay quiet. And then what ends up happening is that religious Jews end up dying for the sins of the irreligious, because they've stayed quiet for so long. I get it. You can be a Zionist and be fully religious and fully Jewish. That doesn't mean that Judaism endorses Zionism.
So is that not a contradiction, though? Because if they practice Judaism and they practice Torah, it does say that you guys should be in the land. So they'll hate you even more, because then you'll be able to stand 10 toes down. You'll be able to say, no, we practice Torah. We are right with God. And this is our land. We have the right to be here. You'll really be able to stand 10 toes down.
No, I know.
You see what I'm trying to say?
I think Zionism nowadays is really defined that you support the state of Israel, the secular state of Israel, which is fine. I think it's good to support the secular state of Israel. However, when you combine it with Judaism, saying like they're the same, and if for some reason you don't support the state, then you're not really Jewish. That's when Judaism begins to suffer, because it's become politicized.
You're not. Who do you need to say this for? It doesn't help.
For anyone who wants to convert to Judaism.
In other words, people are looking at you and they're saying, oh, is this guy a Zionist or not? You say I'm not a Zionist, you're paired up with pro-Palestinian people. You say I am a Zionist, then it just means that you want to protect the people in the land of Israel and that Israel shouldn't be dismantled. No one looks at Zionism for its relationship to Judaism right now anyway. Okay. So you don't help anyone unless you want to really get into the person's ready to listen to a full conversation. I mean, in general, I'm not sure I agree with you. I mean,
well, there's no sign that says that I'm anti-Zionist here, by the way. Okay, I try to make a distinction. The problem is, if people ultimately made a distinction, then Jews on TikTok wouldn't get so offended because they don't make a distinction. I get it. Colloquially, if you support the state of Israel or you call yourself a person who doesn't support Zionists, you're going to get lumped in with the left and even the Torah Carta. However, why is it that Jews on TikTok also don't make a distinction? The average Jew on TikTok says Judaism is an ethno religion, right? We have an indigenous claim to the land when they don't even believe in God. They're fooled. They're the ones peddling the misinformation. So if you're saying that, yes, they know what you're saying, but for sake of argument, they also just identify as Zionists is one thing, but that's not what they're doing. They're confused. We're confusing other Jews to think that there's no distinction between the two.
I think that, again, the bringing out these subtle facts and ideas is something that is such a niche argument for like scholarly people that the way that a person should present themselves is it's just the reality of what it is today. That
yeah, that's from a secular perspective. Hold on.
I just don't understand who the argument is for. Like even this chat right here, there's 50 people, whatever, listening. Like how many of them are going to understand why the early Hasidim were against the Zionism, plus the land of Israel as a state has evolved and has become much more religious, and the people who just believe in the state have actually fizzled out much more. Even in the Knesset and all the governmental things, there's so much more religious influence. I mean,
I get it. This is a political discussion, but this is a religious show, and I think it's the only purely Orthodox religious show on TikTok. So if even in the religious show we have to peddle misinformation just because of the political movement, that's the sign that Zionism is affecting Judaism. Why can't you have a show just about religion, right? Without just stating the facts as they actually are, without having to reword every statement to coincide with the Zionist argument.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually take it the opposite way, that most people don't have to reword anything because they actually are staying true to the sect or the side or the pole that they're on. You, because you want to relay information and create some scholarship around this idea with its nuances, so you have to reinform and reshape. But this would be an exceptional thing. I mean, I agree with you. There's what you're speaking about is a very classic argument within basically Orthodox religious circles as to how integrated does stateship have to be with Judaism, and that's an argument. Again, that's not necessarily.
But the secularists don't offer us that courtesy.
There's a lot of opinions on it, but it's such a niche, subtle argument that's it's kind of for you to be like, hey guys, I'm actually going to tell you what's really going on with Zionism from a Jewish Orthodox perspective. But for the general people who are either supporting or not supporting on TikTok and spreading their word, like, yeah, you don't have to get too deep into it. Like, you're either somebody who's for Israel right now, which essentially has to do with your life and Judaism because of how threatening it is, or you're anti. Okay. It's just got to keep it pretty simple, I think.
So the secularists don't offer us that courtesy. That means if you would assume that it's better for me not to blur the lines or to cross over, they cross over day and night. They will use Judaism to promote Zionism, especially with those who already think we're inherently evil. The average secular Jew on TikTok, when they're defending Zionism, they're defending it against religious people who want to see it dismantled, specifically Muslims. Every time a Muslim comes on the show, they're surprised to hear that you could convert to Judaism. Why are they surprised to hear it? Because the average supporter of the state of Israel on TikTok who's Jewish will only make an indigenous claim which will make Muslims think like, you know what? Everything that we've said about you is true. You only care about yourselves. Islam is the universal religion. And then I have to come here. No, you could convert to Judaism. Even today, I've had 2 Muslims tell me you can't convert to Judaism. If your mother's not Jewish, you're not Jewish. And they've dialogued with many Jews, but it's the average Zionist lies by omission. Just to push their agenda, Judaism suffers. So there has to be some show, at least from a religious perspective, and this is what I claim my show to be, that lays it out how it is. That's it. I mean, there's no anti-Israel flag here, but I have to make a distinction. There is a distinction between Zionism and Judaism. Even though, yes, I would not make this a political show and push that agenda because it's going to confuse more people than it helps. But this is a religious show.
Tell me what you think the masses think. That, in other words, Muslims and people who are maybe anti-Israel, what do they think when a Zionist, interlinks Judaism? They actually think that, oh, you're only Jewish because you live in Israel, or you're more Jewish because you live in Israel. I mean, what are you trying to debunk so badly?
The indigenous claim and the idea that Judaism is an ethno-religion. That means it limits it to flesh and blood and not to acceptance of individual moral training. I encourage people to consider becoming Jewish. The average person feels that now it's an extra stumbling block in front of them. Now, like if I don't identify as a Zionist, I'll never be accepted as a Jew. It's an indigenous claim, so I can't convert to Judaism like most Muslims. Most people on TikTok looking for a religious outlet and they become Muslim would have become Jewish if they didn't hear Jews constantly make the claim that what makes you Jewish is only having a Jewish mother. They should also say it's true. If you have a Jewish mother, you're halakhically Jewish, but you could convert to Judaism also. They never make the claim because it would hurt their indigenous claim and right to the land of Israel, which is, again, Judaism becoming politicized. So I'm just laying things...
But as a state law, the converts can also move to Israel.
I understand, but that's not being told over by those making the indigenous claim. They lie by omission. This is why the average Muslim that debates an Israeli never hears that idea. Why? Because the Muslim will be like, oh, well, this just shows that you're European converts. Who cares? It promotes a Jewish idea that it doesn't matter blood. Blood doesn't matter. It's not an indigenous claim.
Cedars.
What?
I just wanted to see, are you Cedars of, is it Zion? I don't know what you're...
Of Lebanon.
Lebanon.
Oh, okay. Are you Jewish?
Yes.
Okay. So are you a convert?
I'm not a convert.
No, okay. So people, I think, that convert understand what non-Jewish people understand. And sometimes it seems like what we talk about as former Christians doesn't make sense to Jewish people because, there's halacha, there's, different rituals and things that as a Jewish person born Jewish, that is just taken for granted, but from a non-Jewish perspective, that doesn't make any sense. Like that's not, doing kosher doesn't make sense unless there's all this foundation that Rabbi is teaching and does so well.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the point.
Hold on.
So what I'm saying is he speaks to people who are not Jewish in a way that non-Jewish people understand.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I don't think it makes sense from a Jewish perspective.
I mean, I completely agree with what she says. I think most people are going to miss what she's actually saying. I converted to Judaism, by the way, 25 years ago. I made Aliyah. I lived in Israel for 5 years. I know both worlds, and it's true. The average person who grew up like I did, the only thing they know about Judaism is social media.
Right.
And once they find out that they've been receiving incorrect information by many pro-Israel people who, for the sake of winning the Zionist argument, right, they trample on the tenets of Judaism by not emphasizing that this land belongs to anyone who keeps Torah, right? I mean, not just flesh and blood. It'll get them to choose an alternative to Judaism when looking for some sort of ethical outlet, i.e. Islam, in the vast majority of cases. So this is why Judaism shouldn't suffer because of the Zionist entity in any way, but it does. This is why in Europe and France, Jews can't even wear a kippah, not because Muslims have an issue with people wearing, keeping Shabbat or wearing tefillin, but because everyone is lumped as a Zionist now. All right? And I support Israel, but I know that not most Haredim don't support Israel from that perspective. That means they may support it as a democracy, but they're not willing to get shot over it, right? You understand my point? Or her point?
I understand your point. I mean, I think that again, first of all, Israel is right now is what it is. It's a land with millions of Jewish lives at stake. So, we can philosophize all we want, but we are intrinsically connected as people of flesh and blood with the land. I mean, it doesn't even matter necessarily our indigenous roots with Israel. I mean, it's a land that as a unit, as a people, it's pertinent to protect, because we're dealing with literally their lives, the lives of our brothers and sisters. So even if you want to separate Judaism and Zionism and say Zionism is essentially just the political situation of Jews today, that's still something that's important to protect, because we're dealing with the lives of millions and hundreds of thousands of Orthodox Jews as well. So, I mean, I think that's the perspective.
I'm not promoting anti-Zionism, by the way.
I agree with you, Cedars, on that, to not really speak negatively of any Jewish people because of the dangers and all the anti-Semitism in the world. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
To be careful.
Yeah, because again, it's just like you don't get too far. You don't really get. I would appreciate it that as a person who's a scholarly Orthodox Jew, I would appreciate the back and forth. Let's say between the Kookniks and the Hasidim, whatever it is. Like even the Neturei Karta, like they have a place and a foundation with their claim, against relating the land to Judaism. Like, yeah, it goes back very far. I know as a person who has a lot of experience with Chabad, right? Let's say that there was actually a shift from the previous, Chabad Rebbe from the 30s to the most recent one, who looks as if he's a Zionist. He never said he's a Zionist, but he screamed about protecting Israel. But the initial, when they started it, the land of Israel, there were many of the sects of the Rebbes who were against it for the same reasons, which I'm sure you're going to say, which is like, well, but once it's created and there was this influx and there was such a strong level of practicing Jews, essentially it's just about protecting the people there and actually politicizing it into the sense of at least using politics to logically inform people that it's a democracy, it's a place of whatever free range. It's not a place that wants to take over the whole world, whatever it is, against the Muslim ideology in whatever way you can. That's I think that has to be the mission, because the subtleties of why, what the relationship of Judaism is with Zionism is more of a connection if it wasn't established already, basically.
So
All the philosophizing of it is
I don't disagree with anything you said.
before it's established.
I don't disagree with anything you said.
If I can be wrong, but I think one of the main points that he's made on this live is that he doesn't necessarily consider somebody a brother just because they have a Jewish mother if they're not keeping Torah. Am I wrong about that, Rabbi?
Oh, yeah. I didn't make that point like on this live, but like I don't consider someone in a covenant with God if they don't keep the covenant. Now, I could consider, I'm an Israeli citizen. I could consider colloquially someone my brother from that perspective, but I don't think God. We're all, people who inhabit this planet like are split between the religious and the secular. I have a secular perspective. I have many friends. I ride in a motorcycle group. I have many friends that I could consider my brothers, but I can't consider them my brothers in Judaism in a covenant with God unless they're religiously Jewish, right? I have friends who are secular and are Jewish, and I consider them close friends, but I'm not going to blur the lines and say, oh, like you're you're my brother in Judaism because you're an Israeli or because of the blood running through your veins. I think that's more of a Kabbalistic claim. I think that hurts Judaism because now there's no standards. It's just DNA. When that idea doesn't appear in the Torah, that DNA matters.
I mean, I don't think that's true at all. I think it's, first of all, it says Afilu Paishe Yisrael Melei Mitzvahs Keriman. Even the sinners of Israel are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. That's from the Talmud, right? What's the meaning of that? It's that once you've entered the covenant because of your blood, then the things that you do that you don't even realize you're doing as a mitzvah are counted as mitzvot. So there is an advantage to having.
All right, so that's more like a Lubavitcher understanding of it. The understanding, yes, if a Jew sins, he's still a Jew. But if someone turns their back on God, we're not talking about Jews sinning. Okay, you could sin and still be religious. The idea of people turning their back on God,
I don't think there was anything in Lubavitch about that, but go ahead.
That's fully Lubavitcher. This is why they go.
No,
your shlichut was invented by Chabad, by the way. I mean, shlichut, the idea of going up to secular Jews because they have this supposed potential, was made popular in the first two prakim in the Tanya. The idea.
I actually agree with Cedars on that because, not just the blood, but that there's a culture among Jewish people that goes into every aspect of living, and you pass that on to your children.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with Judaism? Hold on. Let me answer like his statement.
No, I love you, Rabbi.
No, I know. Yeah, but I have to respond. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, see, the idea with that every Jew is like full of mitzvot, like a pomegranate is full with seeds.
Yes.
Is only for Jews who identify with the covenant of God. If you're saying that is inherent, passed via DNA, because someone happens to have Jewish blood, that's the Lubavitcher contribution. That's not the Talmudic contribution. The Talmudic contribution is if someone is Machal Shabbos, Lefarhesia, it calls them a Mumar Lechachis, and it calls them Kegoy.
Yeah, but that's only if they already know about the covenant. That's most Jews.
It doesn't say that, by the way. Okay.
Huh?
If you want to make a distinction between a Tinuk Shenishba,
but what about Tinuk Shenishba?
Right. So Tinuk Shenishba is a complete. It's not an actual din, by the way, because the Rambam says in Hilchos Mamre, it says that regarding a Tinuk Shenishba, like you just walk to unalive them, you just don't run to unalive them. Yeah, but they're still liable to death penalty, assuming they were given hasra and like they lived in the land of Israel when there was a Sanhedrin. This idea that secular Jews get a pass religiously just because they have DNA and they all have the status of kidnapped children is a modern interpretation. That's nowhere in the Talmud. Someone who, again, secular doesn't mean necessarily that you don't believe in God. You could be secular and still be religious, right? Modern Orthodoxy is an infusion of living in a secular world but still having Jewish values. An atheist. Someone who says, I don't believe in God, you believe that person still has these mitzvot within them?
I believe that most people today, Jews today, were not raised to have an understanding at all. I was at a Seder this week, and an Israeli guy that I invited totally accidentally, he's like, I was looking for some kosher things to bring. He brought desserts that made of fully chametz. Like, how do you not know? Again, with a heart that I wanted to go to Seder, who wasn't trying to rebel. He's
a religious Jew. That sounds like a religious Jew to me.
Let me say this. I've been on here and I've run into people that call themselves practicing Jews of Judaism, and then they turned around and told me they were practice witchcraft or that they were part of the rainbow community, and then they still said things like, "Oh no, but I think I'm not saying he said exactly that, but my point is I've run into a lot of people like that. You can't. That's like against the Levitical law, but they'll still stand on the fact that, I'm Jewish blood, but yes, I'm a witch. And then, I've seen so many people that say they're in Judaism that openly practice the black arts, and that's crazy. I've like talked to them.
I don't know why atheism is any
they're
worse.
also part of the rainbow community, but no, they have Jewish mothers though. Is the point I'm
Yeah, I know.
making?
And it means nothing. Having a
Right,
Jewish
that's my
mother means
point.
nothing.
That's my point.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think it's more to me. I've heard the example which I connect with, like citizenship, right? So me, born as an American, so I don't have to know, all the presidents. But if someone's coming from Colombia, so they have to know all this stuff and all this things about the government and the system to be able to get the green card, and then they're American after that. So I think that someone born Jewish, yes, there's a certain inheritance element to it, that they're born into a covenant. Now, how much they know about that covenant is depending on the situation, the circumstance of what they're taught.
Okay.
A person who's a ger, a convert, is going to for sure know more about Judaism and be more connected to the covenant, because they have to work in that lifetime for whatever incarnation they're in to actually fully know all the laws so that they can get in. So, of course, they're going to be more from the onset if they're actually doing an Orthodox conversion, because they have to, just like the person who's becoming a citizen is going to know more about American history than the American guy. But
Again,
that has
I don't think
nothing
we're
to do with the status of Judaism.
We're not differing on anything you said here. Clearly, if your mother's Jewish, you're halakhically Jewish. Okay, and if someone brings chametz to a Passover Seder, they're at the Passover Seder. They're not irreligious. They believe in God. They just don't know that is an actual tinok shenishba. However, I'm talking about people who say, I don't believe in God. However, I still lay a claim to the land because of the Torah. That is what I'm talking about. This is antithetical to the Torah. That doesn't exist. We have the notion of karas, right? Someone who's high of karas, it says that they're cut off from their people. This idea of once Jew, always a Jew was invented by Chabad.
How do you feel about the first Rashi in the Torah? Has that been brought up yet?
Of the land of Israel belonging to
if the nations come to us and they say, the land is ours, we say that he took it from you, he gave it to us.
Yeah, and then he could give it to whoever he wants, and he gave it to us. Anything Rashi has to say about Jews, he's referring to religious Jews.
So, I would think, again, in a more scholarly argument, there is of course room to say, and I don't know, because I don't know you sound like you're maybe part of the choikrim, like more, you don't believe anything of a deeper, not believe, but maybe you're part of more of a religious sect of you're not taking in this concept of the Jewish soul that's, no matter what, has this connection. Even though there's kares, there's still an aspect of being able to do tshuva, etc.
I'm a misnagid, yes. Even though my son's in Lubavitch, by the way. My son goes to Lubavitch here. That's why I put him there. I go to Chabad. I go to Chabad because my son wants to play with his friends.
Yeah,
the Seder I went to
don't
was
care
Chabad.
if you go to Chabad. I'm just saying philosophically, because I can bring a lot of defenses to the concept of the essence.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Essence of the soul.
They're all kabbalistically based.
Tainted. But you're saying you don't accept those necessarily because you would want Talmudic arguments.
Correct. So the group I belong to, there are no real misnagdim nowadays post Shlomo Carlebach. I consider myself a rationalist, but most rationalists typically are big on the Rambam and before. We're not convinced of the Zohar, although I don't think it's necessarily bad. I just think, I view it like a collection of midrashim. So the notion of Pintel Yid and a Yiddish Neshama, all this stuff is post Zohar. Made popular by the Arizal, and the Tanya made the Arizal popular. And this is why, for something to be inherent Judaism for me, source material, it would have to either appear by Chazal or in Torah Shabbat.
Okay, so you would accept any Talmudic argument to, opposing this view that Karis would actually, limit or disconnect a Jew, that they can't come back from.
So
if there was a Talmudic.
So there's seven different understandings of what Karas means by Chazal, and they don't agree. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar. There's one says that you're going to die before the age of 60. The other one's like your son's going to die. No one knows what Karas means. You know, so in terms of actually sticking to the mikra, like I'll take it from that perspective, but that you're cut out. I mean, even now we have like rabbinic Karas. The understanding that even the people during the expulsion of Spain, where they were trying to reinstitute smicha, you know, because they wanted to receive, you know, malchus to take the Karas away. It's because they understood even back then that if you leave Judaism, like you're higher Karas if you like become an idolater. So I think kafira is worse than avodah zarah, and kafira is atheism. With the idea that an atheist is still a Jew and still special more than anybody else, I think it's a bigoted idea. And
I mean, you're chayav kares for eating a
Pesach,
of chametz right now, right?
For sure.
So there's a lot of things you're chayav kares for.
Yeah, no, but you have to do it publicly. I mean, you do it lefar hesia, like look what I'm doing nationally, like I'm spitting on the Torah. Then like, you should be chayav kares. I mean, you're also nida. I mean, being with the nida is also chayav kares.
I mean, there's thousands of people eating chametz right now publicly.
Yeah,
I don't know how you do. You consider people who are totally not aware chayav kares? You know, like and also, I mean, what does that mean that they can't do teshuva? Like, I don't know.
Wait.
It's really hard to say that means that you don't like God. I mean, it's to me today. Again, I think because of the involvement of the world and where we're at, it's more about where people stand in their mind philosophically. You tell me a person's an atheist, I mean, okay, I even have hope for that person. Maybe they need more. But just the general, like, oh, I love Judaism, I love God, literally while eating a pork sandwich, like, yeah, that's just the nature of how things are today. The only way to get that person to be more connected is to educate them because they love it.
I'm not against it, by the way. I mean, I'm all for kiruv, shlichut, what you want to call it. However, I do it equally. To say that one group is just going to focus on people with a specific DNA, that's when it becomes bigoted. I mean, regarding Karas, we have this principle of ein mikra yotzev midei pashuto. That if you don't, like, if there's a big machlokas on what a word actually means by Chazal, which is where Karas would fall under, we would at least have to understand with the ikr of like the actual shores of the word, according to the Torah, it means to be cut off. This idea that someone is chayav kares, but they're still accepted in your community, like he's just like a tinok shenishba, is something invented by Lubavitch. Again,
okay, so how does teshuva fall in? Because we also have teshuva in the Torah, right?
Yeah.
We also have this concept of return, penitence, even the concept of returning to the land, that God will return us to the land, right? How does that fall in with this concept of the person who's cut off, cut away?
So I think this is why the rabbis introduce the notion of rabbinic karas. In order to remove karas, from a halakhic perspective, you have to get lashes. But this is only while you're in the land of Israel, by the way. If you ever wanted to reestablish a temple, that's what you would have to do. Teshuvah could occur in Gullus. Right? I mean, you could repent today.
By the way, I think all these things about lashes and STO and it's all irrelevant. Let's talk about modern Judaism and where we're actually at today.
All right, so a Jew could do tshuva halakhically as fast as a Gentile could convert.
Which takes months and years.
Oh, so I mean, not according to halakha. I mean, according to halakha, conversions like take a day.
According to the Rambam, it's very easy.
Yeah.
According to the Rambam, he took all Shlomo converted all of his wives before he married them.
I mean, according to the Gemara. According to the Gemara, what's the only instance we have of accepting Gerim? It says the guy who comes to Hillel to convert, and he converts him right away, and then he teaches him Torah. Right away, by the way. You know, so this whole year's converting thing is post-1948.
But do you agree with that process for the sake of actually validating people's kind of,
I mean,
you know, commitment?
So if I'm going to validate a secular Jew's commitment by them doing tshuva in 5 minutes, why would I make it any harder for an irreligious Gentile inquiring about Judaism and wanting to join?
Because it's the citizenship thing.
Oh, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. Citizenship, again, that you believe that there's something inherently special about someone having a Jewish mother apart from what they believe in or how they behave. Like, not according to the Torah.
May I ask you a question? Sorry for interrupting, by the way.
Yeah. We're by the way, so this is go ahead.
Okay, because I was thinking about that. Okay, from from a state point of view, besides the religion, okay, besides the religious process, okay, from a state point of view, let's suppose Israel right now is the Israel with the biblical Israel, okay, the religious Israel. So how do you put it in the case of someone wanting to convert and then getting the citizenship? I mean, you could you convert him for the sake of conversion, for the sake of heaven, but not giving citizenship? You know what I mean? Because you gotta be sure.
I get it. Yeah.
How can you deal with that? My question is, how would you do that?
Conversion is not a spiritual process, by the way. It's only a legal one. So just like someone could be born into Judaism and not believe in God, someone could convert to Judaism and not believe in God. I mean, the Rambam says that if you fail to inspect their motives, they're still Jewish. The Rambam says if they worship idols a minute later, they have the status of an apostate Jew. Yes, you're still Jewish. Is there anything inherently special about that? No, there isn't. It's just a legal status. From that perspective, yes, citizenship counts, even though no one's going to marry into you, although technically, I mean, they can. Like the Kiddushin is still valid. But does God view you like, oh, you know, this is a loophole. Like now, like I have to include you in the Gula? No, that makes no sense. I mean, God himself will probably make sure that you don't make it across the border if the Sanhedrin doesn't.
I mean, by just a legal point of view, okay, just from the state of Israel that got a guarantee for his citizens, okay, to make sure that anyone entered the country for other reasons, like just for ensure that you are coming here just because you're from that point of view. How would you deal with that?
I agree with Cedars. If an atheist wanted to live in the land of Israel, not now, I'm saying in biblical times,
okay,
and they kept all the mitzvot, which don't need actual kavana, right? I mean, like at least from a legal perspective, like for you to accomplish them. He could live in a land and not believe in God and just not break the lands of Israel proper. Like you don't break the laws of America proper. Yeah, I mean, you could coexist alongside. I don't think, I mean, there's a tshuva by the Radbaz who says that a Jew doesn't have to believe anything. Like he just has to keep mitzvot. Makes sense. I mean, the Rambam disagrees. He has 13 principles. Sefer HaKarim has 3 principles. So yeah, I mean, that's a loophole.
The other way is also true, by the way. If a person, unfortunately, you see a lot. Not unfortunately, it's hard. It's because of how hard it is to convert. I've met a lot of non-Jews, not a lot, but a handful that actually are super, connected or practicing of Judaism, but they don't feel like they need to convert. But they're still not Jewish.
I haven't met any. Like I've met Noahides before, which I think it's a joke to begin with. I think anyone who pushes the Noahide movement doesn't really know halakha. But the idea that you want to keep all the mitzvot, there was a group in the Second Temple times called the God-fearers who did this. They kept all the laws, but because I think they were scared of circumcision, they just stayed with the status of Gentiles. That sounds a bit silly, because I mean, from an ethical perspective, I think making the world a better place is a team effort. You have to align yourself with other people. Who are your kids going to marry, right? I mean, you need some structure. So yeah, I mean, someone could be radical from that perspective, but it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. The fact is that you need to be baked in, and you need to be connected to community. That's one of the things that conversion rabbis are looking for the most. Like, who's your community? I know one of the rabbis here who converts. I'm in LA. He's like, okay, are you next to he makes them move next to a shul if they want to convert, or to be part of a community, like a walking distance. How are you going to keep to what Judaism today is if you don't have a synagogue you can walk to on the Sabbath, if you'd have to drive to a synagogue on the Sabbath?
Yeah. I mean, I think the point is that
it's a very communal related thing.
Being Jewish means nothing. It's what you do with it. By the simple fact that you could be born Jewish, that means Jewish by coincidence? Or
I don't believe that, because once you're born Jewish, first of all, you already have an awareness that you have a connection to something. I think a lot of where I disagree with you in is I believe very strongly in hashgacha pratit. I don't know how to translate that.
It means divine providence,
or the circumstances given by God are And to me, that is, first of all, the generation you live in, the family you were born in, the things you hear on a daily basis that educate you. So a person born into Judaism already gives them an indication that that's the path that they might find towards God, towards connection. So that's number one. And number two is that they don't have to go through a process at all, because the fact is, yeah, you can be converted in a minute, al pi halakha, but it takes a year today, and it's a very, very, very off-putting process. On the other hand, you have a Jew who was born Jewish. Their tshuva is actually can be in a moment. Their repentance and their connection can be created in a moment. So there's so many advantages. I'm not saying they're better than a convert. On the opposite, a convert probably can.
You're making two comparisons here that don't match up. You're saying that, yes, it's true. People could be born from wealthy families. Someone could be born from a family that's more religiously inclined versus not. Everyone has some sort of privilege on this planet. So if someone happens to be born in a family where they eat matzo ball soup and this and that, they may have some sort of cultural connection to the Jewish people. How does that translate with choosing how hard we're going to make it for people to come to Judaism? Saying, well, because of this cultural connection, this person's a shoo-in. When I don't even know where Jewish culture nowadays even ties to Torah, it ties to Jewish culture. While a convert, we're going to make sure that he knows everything in and out. We're going to make him, we're going to discourage him. How does that make any ethical sense?
That is what happens. That is the process.
I know, but it's incorrect.
Teshuvah, he doesn't have to go through any tests.
I know, but it's
he
wrong.
Has to just start keeping Shabbat.
But it's wrong.
If a goy wants to do Judaism, he can't even keep Shabbat.
I understand, but do you realize that it's wrong?
Can I say?
It's wrong.
It's unethical.
Sorry.
No. I just wanted to rebuttal that, because you're basically saying that somebody is born innately more connected with God. But that's not even, the rabbi might not agree with what I read, but that's not even in scripture. In Isaiah, let me make my point real quick, and then you can rebuttal it. In Isaiah 65, it says, I am sought of them that asked not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me, unto a nation that was not called by my name. I have spread out my hands all day long unto a rebellious people who walketh in a way that was not good after their own thoughts. So it's a comparison to what people who were born Jews were doing. And he's saying that at a certain time, he will reveal himself to people that are not of, a Jewish born mother. But the people that were born of a Jewish born mother, they're being rebellious. So this whole notion that because you're born a Jew, you automatically have an innate nature towards God, the prophet did not say that. So I'm not saying that's all Jews, of course, but this notion that because you're born a Jew, you won't do wickedness, that's not true.
So I didn't say that either, and I agree with you. I actually think that everybody has an equal connection with God, or ability to connect with God. And I don't think the only way that you can reach God is through Judaism. Because if that was the case, and Judaism was true, then Judaism would want everybody to be Jewish, which is not.
Maybe it does, by the way. According to the Torah, maybe it does.
That's debatable, but let me finish my point, and then we could debate on that. I never said that a person who's born Jewish is innately more connected with God than anybody else, because I don't believe God is limited by Judaism, and a person's connection with God is limited to Judaism. But, however, I believe that somebody born Jewish has more of a connection to that path and more of an easy ability to pivot into that path, because, first of all, they're aware that they're Jewish. They have no challenges to getting there. As much as the rabbi wants to say that it should take either longer it should take more tests for a Jew to be able to make teshuvah and come back, or it should take less time for a non-Jew to convert. That's in a certain sense irrelevant, because that's not the reality on the ground today. The reality on the ground today is that it does take a long time for a convert to convert, and that if a Jew is born Jewish, first of all, they're aware that they're Jewish, so therefore that's already an indication that perhaps this is the path towards God for them, and not that they're better than anyone else, but that for them it's the path towards God, and that it's actually extremely easy. I mean, keeping the mitzvot is not easy, but the ability to just get into it right off the bat and have a community and not have to go through a Beit Din and a whole process is much easier for them.
So let me respond.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that's more connected to God. I don't believe Judaism is more connected to God.
So I think you're conflicting what's done colloquially. You're right. It's easier for someone to return to Judaism nowadays than it is for them to convert to Judaism. My challenge is that this wasn't the opinion in the Talmud. But some of the fact that I just showed that they converted people the same day, and they never sought out people because of DNA. It shows that what we do now is not backed up by Chazal. Lubavitch invented Kiruv, or what they call Shlichut. They invented it. Nowhere in the Talmud, like, do you see people going up to like Roman citizens asking them, "Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?" So I get it. I just believe that it's wrong. I think that growing up in a Christian community versus growing up in a Jewish community automatically makes you closer to God than being ethnically Jewish. The average Jew is irreligious. You're saying that just by being born Jewish, that means they're closer to the path is incorrect. The vast majority of Jews don't believe in God. I think the last poll, there's this website called simpletoremember.com.
There's still more Jews returning to Judaism than converts. So they are closer.
Oh, they're
aware.
That's only because of outreach. If there was more, if the outreach was equal, if they encouraged Gentiles to consider Judaism on the level that Esha Torah and Chabad and all these groups encourage secular Jews to return, you'd get more Gentiles per capita, right, than you would Jews. I was in McCarvey Hebrew University for 5 years. It's quite impossible to convince an atheistical Jew to go to yeshiva. It's quite impossible to convince an atheist to do anything, by the way. While Christians are I mean, the vast majority of Zionists on this planet aren't Jewish, they're Christian. Right? Most converts to Judaism come from Christianity, not atheism and not Islam. This idea that only because you were born Jewish, you in some way spiritually have a leg up, I don't see that in the world today. I actually think that it's harder to convince someone outside of an ethnic, like a Jewish cultural understanding of the world than it is to convince a Christian to consider becoming Jewish. And this is just the way.
No. You're speaking personality wise. You're speaking. First of all, your numbers are totally there's no basis for your numbers. There's so many more non-Jews than Jews. So it's really a personality.
I said per capita.
Happens to be per capita. It happens to be that Jews have. In general, if you want to what's called stereotype, Jews have this kind of maybe a colder logic, so that would be harder to convince anyone into belief, which is not so by the masses, which is everyone else but with Judaism, which is billions of people. Of course, you're going to find more people who are more easily convincible into faith. I don't think that is a defining factor of
I'm saying Gentiles have a higher proclivity for faith
being more connected or able to be connected. It's just there's just a process. Just a process.
So I would say, like, if I had 100
up or down over here.
If I had 100 Christians versus 100 Jews with the same message, I would get more converts to Judaism than like people doing tshuva.
Well, again, there's a certain cynicism for people maybe that were born into Judaism
because of secular Judaism.
Huh?
It's because of secular Judaism, because people have been peddling your argument that they're special, even though they don't keep Torah. It says, if I'm special already, why do I have to keep Torah? And this is why it makes it harder for every other Jewish person around them to come to Torah. Instead of saying, no, you're only special if you keep Torah, then that culture would break. We have to try to de-ethnicize the religion. because you've ethnicized the religion, it's harder for them to actually come to the religion because they're so, involved in this like Semitic heritage festival, every week and not really understanding what they're saying in a synagogue. Understand?
I understand what you're saying, but I do still think that there is an ethnic aspect to Judaism.
There is an ethnic aspect, but it's not a religious one.
Huh?
For sure, there's an ethnic component to the Jewish people, but there isn't a religious one.
The religion is not intertwined with their ethnicity. Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
In other words, it doesn't mandate or cause them to be more religious, but it is an inheritance. It is an inheritance. It's just like money is an inheritance. It's an inheritance which eases the path towards Judaism. That's very clear.
How does it ease it? Like if we just basically spoke about how Christians have a higher proclivity.
Their nature might make it harder for them. But first of all, who am I or you to judge or know people's natures?
But you just made the statement that they have a higher proclivity if they happen to have a Jewish mother, right? But now you're saying that they don't. The average Jew.
By the way, if you took 100 Christians and put them in the room, and put 100 Jews and put them in a room, and you had a great rabbi speak and try to make a convincing argument about Judaism, I totally don't agree with you that 100 Christians would have more converts out of them, because Christians are actual Christians are extremely gung ho about the kind of turning of Judaism towards Jesus being the savior. I mean, the whole thing of Christianity is that you can believe in all of Judaism and still see it with this twist and through the lens of Jesus being the ultimate prophet. It's not easy to convince a Christian. Christians are always trying to convince you of their religion. They know a lot about Judaism already.
Okay, so what's closer to Judaism? Christianity or atheism?
I don't think most Jews are atheists.
I think atheism myself.
You think atheism is? Oh, well, you're. I don't want to say derogatory, but you're Reformed. Reformed Jews have a different perspective on all this. I think Christianity is a lot closer to Judaism than atheism is. But yes, not all Jews are atheists for sure. The word "all" shouldn't enter any discussion. But I would say that most Jews are atheists. There's a poll that 54% of people born of Jewish mothers identify with atheism. The average Jew has an atheist in their family. The average Jew doesn't have a Christian in their family. And I just see it as more of a pandemic religiously than someone believing in Jesus.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the people who believe in Jesus, they're not going to be easily turned to Judaism. I don't think so.
But they already support the state of Israel. I mean, why do you think?
No, that's amazing. I love Christians have been amazing to us. They've been sick with us in different aspects of history too. It's all up to God, in my opinion, who's going to turn against us and what power struggle or reasons they would. Right now, they're amazing with us, with Jews.
So why would
Those are the Catholics?
So why would you show preference to someone who has a Jewish mother regarding outreach instead of an inquisitive, decent Christian?
Because an inquisitive, decent Christian, in other words, they're coming to you because they're like, hey, let me see, maybe Judaism's true.
Right, the God of Israel. They already believe in the God of Israel. Not that they're coming for you, because outreach in the Jewish world, you're actually going to them. Why not go to them equally? Why do you feel like showing preference?
By the way, too, they're doing outreach all the time.
No, I get it. Correctly so, by the way, because they don't distinguish between Jew and Puerto Rican. They'll reach out to both of them equally. However, the average Lubavitcher will in some way push you away and just to get closer to the ethnic Jew, in the midst. That means they separate the world tribally and not ethically.
The Lubavitchers do what they do because of. I don't think it's so much because of the basis in Torah, by the way. I think it's because of where our community has fallen in the place in history. In other words, it's because of the time. We're not anymore sheltered by the walls of the ghetto and by this deep, culturally intertwined religious culture interconnectedness. It's now we're so far from that they're just trying to altruistically, indicate or let people know about their Judaism. They're not trying to force or convince anyone. They're just trying. I mean, again, unless some of them are maybe a little bit wild and out about it, but it's really about where we've landed in a historical place in the generation that we're in.
Come on, that's not fair.
That's not fair. For that.
Okay, so the reason Lubavitchers do what they do is because of the first 2 chapters in the Tanya. The first chapter says that the neshamas of Gentiles come from the Sitra Achra, from the unclean klipot. And regarding the soul of a Jew, it says that it's an actual piece of God. That's why. Now, I know Lubavitch is...
By the way, that's in the Zohar. That's not from... That's taken from the Zohar.
Well, I mean, it's taken from the Arizal. It starts quoting the Arizal. Fine. I mean, it's Hasidut that made it popular. And this is why they do what they do. And the Tanya doesn't even teach that you could convert. Meaning, if you do convert, it means because you were Jewish all along. That this idea that a Gentile could elevate their status is not a Kabbalistic idea. This is why they do what they do.
But that's not in Hasidut. Ger shenit gayer.
Yeah.
That's, I believe, already in Midrash that it says that they already had a Jewish soul.
No, okay. That's not what it means, by the way. Because I just quoted the story. A ger who is converted, or like it says, a ger came, to be converted, because ger means stranger, and it also means convert. I mean, it doesn't mean that the ger, someone who's Magayer doesn't mean that they were always Jewish. I understand the Lubavitch contribution, but they fail to acknowledge that ger means 2 different things. In the statement of Vaftim at the ger, by the way,
concept that the soul was already Jewish. That's I believe from earlier sources. I don't think that's.
So it's not by Chazal. I mean, it does say by Chazal that on Har Sinai, like all the souls were there, but they ran with that, and it's look, Rashi writes in that statement in the Chumash where it says V'aftim et the ger and a ger lo tonet. He says that doesn't mean necessarily converts. It means anyone from the outside who's mistreated for looking different, talking different. So ger does just mean stranger. So it means a stranger who comes to convert. It's Chabad is tricky with their language just to push their idea.
No, I'd have to check into that. I don't think it doesn't sound like Chabad would have any reason, what's it called? Any reason to peddle that argument. That a ger has to be somebody who already had a Jewish neshama. That doesn't seem like a need for Chabad. So it doesn't. I think that would come from an earlier source. I could check it up pretty easily.
It justifies pushing them away. With this notion that within every
Chabad doesn't do conversion, so they don't need to bring anyone or push anyone away.
Right, and that's problematic. I mean, isn't that bigoted? Whether you welcome people with your same blood in, but people not, you push them away.
No, Chabad doesn't want to deal with conversions. And by the way, there are some Lubavitch rabbis who do conversions. It just wasn't part of their agenda to do conversions.
If you're going to spread Judaism, why is it correct now to, in some way, limit who you spread it to? For example, look, if a white person, let's say, had medicine and everyone else was like dying around them, but they only chose to give it to other white people, would that be bigoted or not?
Well, but that's because you believe that everybody should be Jewish. I don't know where you get this from.
You do believe that the mitzvot, keeping the mitzvot, makes the world a better place, right?
That's debatable.
What kind of silly? Come on, man, that's silly. That you don't believe that keeping laws, people not unaliving themselves.
Well, that's debatable within Judaism. It says there's Chazal which say mitzvahs lav lehanis nitnu. The mitzvahs weren't given to pleasure the world or to bring.
Is it debatable in the Torah?
They have no necessary reasoning. And then there's l'shaper sabrius, that there's another opinion that says that it's to refine the creatures.
According to the Chumash,
it also says if we didn't have the Torah, we could learn
right from the animals
from a cat, and we could learn.
It's all midrashim, by the way. I mean, you're just quoting midrashim, right? I mean, you can learn modesty from a cat. You can learn how to work hard by looking at an ant. According to the Chumash, is it debatable in the Chumash?
That mitzvahs improve the world?
That mitzvahs only make the world better when Jews keep them.
I think that's debatable. Absolutely. I don't think that God gave the mitzvahs to the whole world. It says, "Vaydaber Hashem al bnei Israel."
No,
It
I
says
get it.
God speaking to the people of Israel to do this. God speaking to
No, well,
if
so
he
you're
wanted
Jewish
the whole world to do
superior.
that, he would tell the whole entire world to do it.
Okay, so in that mix was the Arab Rav. As a matter of fact, Khazar are adamant that the vast
If someone's trying to speak and it's I can't hear anybody, so I don't know.
no done. All right. So hold on 1 second. I mean, Fish, I'll bring you up in a second just because you have background noise. So first of all, this notion of Bnei Israel on Har Sinai, the vast majority of the people who stood there, according to Chazal, were part of the Arab Rav. And there's two different sets of midrashim. There's one set of midrashim that teach that they were bad. There were another set that teach that they were the best and the brightest in Mitzrayim. So this notion that it's only like DNA Jews, no, it's whoever accepted the covenant. This idea that the Torah is only for Jews, you have to understand the bulk of the Torah are what we call mitzvot ben adam lechavero. Versus like mitzvot ben adam lemakom. Commandments that actually make the world a better place because they're practical. They're between man and man. So, like honoring your parents, like not unaliving people, like all these things only work when when Jews practice them.
No, on the opposite. A lot of those mitzvahs, according to the Talmud, were given before the Torah was given at Sinai.
So what are you disagreeing with then? What are you disagreeing with then?
I'm disagreeing that the specific mitzvahs of how to tie your tzitzis
those are
actually meant for the whole entire world.
I get it, but God doesn't distinguish between mitzvot. So why do you?
I know. Therefore, he does distinguish between mitzvahs because he has certain mitzvahs that he made to settle the world. What is it?
It doesn't say it in the Chumash.
And then he has mitzvahs that he was given to a specific.
All right, so it doesn't say it in the Torah. I mean, I said the
tribe.
Chumash alone.
We're like a tribe.
I mean, the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach doesn't appear in the Torah. I'm saying that according to the Chumash alone, is there a debate? Being that God doesn't he doesn't distinguish between commandments. The same God who said,
but he distinguishes between nations.
Wait, can I see
Bnei Israel, and that's the Chiti, Amori, Aprizi, Vayavusi.
I would like to speak about that, the distinguishing between nations. I think that people very, very soon forget that God was dealing with mankind before there ever was a such thing as a Hebrew or a Jew. So this notion that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob only wanted people that were of the bloodline Jews to worship him is not found in Torah because Noah was not a Jew. Joseph
I never said that. I never said
no.
that he only wants those people to worship him. He wants everyone to worship him. But he wants those specific people to worship him in a specific way because of what they innovated.
Right. But here's the thing, though. He called them out because Abraham was in a land of idolaters, correct?
Yes.
Right. So when he called them out, he did give them specific things to be a light to the Gentile nations, not so the Gentile nations could continue to do what they were doing again.
So you yourself are saying there's a difference between
the Jews. Bree, you're not helping me. Just let me talk to him.
No, what I'm saying is that it's not against God wanting other people to. Well, I'm a Christian, but speaking in Old Testament terms, he would not have minded other people trying to be a part of Israel and keeping Torah. Because
he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind it.
But that was the point of making the Jewish nation so that they could see them as a light and want to serve the God of Israel and not the false gods they were serving. Everybody, besides most of the people that were in Israel, they were serving false gods.
All right. Okay. Hold on. Okay. This discussion is just going to be me and Cedar.
You don't have to serve.
Here, breathe. I'll bring you up later. Okay. I'm sorry, Cedar. It's just you and me because she's actually making your point, by the way. Breathe. You're making his point. You're saying that God's distinguishing between the nation of Israel and every other nation. In the Chumash, according to the Torah, I'm sorry. Every time I say Chumash, I mean the 5 books of Moses. According to the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, there's no difference between a Gentile and a Jew. There's people who keep the Torah and enter the covenant, and people who don't. That's the only difference. If someone from the outside wanted to come in and join, they could. All right. This idea that God doesn't want them to join, that this mission is only for this set people, that these commandments only benefit a certain group of people, that's where Kabbalah comes in.
But there is ethnic differences in the Torah. Okay, for example, it calls the Jewish people Bnei Yisrael, and by the way, it says the kids of Israel. And number two, and then it calls
but
the
the
other
mixed
nations,
multitude is also
the
called Bnei Israel.
Philistines, the Amorites,
No, I know.
the
Yes.
Perizzites.
The question
there's
is,
ethnic differences. Let's also
what does it mean, Bnei Israel? Okay. Now, if the Arab Rab, the mixed multitude,
Tell
made
me, what does it mean literally? I want
no,
you to
not
translate.
literally, according to the Torah.
No, but I want you to translate what it means according to the Torah. Pshat. What does Bnei Israel mean?
It means the children of Israel. Hold on. It means the children of
Israel?
Hold
Who's
on.
Israel?
So Israel is essentially a philosophy. Yes, Yaakov is called Israel. Now,
Okay.
I know that you don't learn it like this. In terms of like, what does it literally say? What's the context? If on Mount Sinai, the Arab Rav said Nasiv and Ishmael alongside the Hebrews, and a few chapters later, they're all called Bnei Israel, it means that Bnei Israel is people who enter the covenant of God. Just like Nevuah is different after the Torah than before, Bnei Israel, being part of God's people, is something different than before. Okay, so that's why DNA doesn't matter. If DNA matters, then a Molech, they should be given special treatment because a Molech.
You don't have to go from Yaakov. Eliezer converted and was under Avram. I mean, yeah, there was.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And a Molech comes from Yitzhak. Edom comes from Yitzhak. And Yitzhak is considered the child of the covenant. That means if you don't keep the covenant, you're not part of the covenant. And the covenant is for anyone who wants to keep it. That means if an Amalekite chose to embrace Torah Judaism, right? God is just as happy as, if an Amalekite comes to Torah than if an unaffiliated secular Jew comes to Torah. He's just as happy. Right?
I agree with you, but I would make a big difference because, for example, you're saying that Ismael comes from Abraham as well. All the other nations. There's other. Listen, the Jews have a history that's like this. You have Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Then you have the 12 tribes. Then we go. We were created by then as a culture. We were tribal. And we had certain customs as a tribe.
Wait.
Then, when we left Egypt and we got the Torah,
detached from the religion.
We were bound by the Torah at a whole different level than that tribalism that we previously had as an ethnicity and as a nation. Then now the Torah now the Torah comes into what prescribes us as being Jewish. It has to do with the covenant, and therefore there could be people can come in, but it has to do with how the Torah prescribes them to come in.
Yeah, why are you going so far forward? No, I mean why do you have to go so far forward to say that people could come in? On Mount Sinai, it was a mixture of different peoples. Israel wasn't anything to God till Mount Sinai. All he had was the promises that he made to Abraham, right? That he would allow his descendants to leave. But what did he do? He allowed everybody to leave. And even Chazal teach that the vast majority of Hebrews stayed behind in Egypt, just like the vast majority of Jews stayed behind in Babel. It was always a universal calling, saying that this culture, and I acknowledge that that anything could create a culture or an ethnicity, that this in some way speaks for the religion, and people who are attaching themselves have to religiously contend with that ethnicity is silly. Okay, yes, in reality, they have to do it just because, man is flawed. But God, in some way, I'm sure, pushes for the de-ethnicizing of the religion, saying that Asians who happen to be Jewish will look down on an Ashkenazi guy because he doesn't look Jewish, right? Because if he's in Asia, or in China, let's say, most Jews look Asian, is silly. Ethnicity should have nothing to do with the religion.
I agree with you, clearly. Clearly, that's true. I agree with you that no one's less Jewish than anyone if you're keeping the Torah. But I'll tell you where we do disagree. We disagree in two things. First of all, that you agree that outreach should be done to bring people to Judaism just as much as it is amongst Jews. That's where one place I disagree with you. And number two is that it should be just as... one second. No, I just lost my train of thought. Okay. I forgot the other thing, but let's just focus on that.
Yeah, why do you
You think
disagree?
it
Wait,
should
hold
be
on.
done-
All right. So you have two babies on a table. Look, my friend James Jacob wanted me to make this example. You have two babies at the table, both of them 8 days old. From that perspective, is there anything more special about, let's say, if one baby is Jewish and one baby isn't?
Yes, because for the big Jewish baby, it's his Brit that day.
Yeah, but it's okay. That Brit is the sign of the covenant he will enter, right? But he doesn't have any belief. I mean, how can God inherently say this baby is greater than this other baby just because he's missing a foreskin?
Well, that's the problem. Oh, the other thing is I don't think anyone's greater than anyone else.
But you just said it.
No, because you think that I think Judaism is greater than everybody else. I don't think so. I think that
You're walking it back. You're walking
I
back.
think that if a Gentile could be righteous in their way, as long as they don't serve idols, etc., and a Jew has a specific way that he's supposed to serve.
That's Lubavitch right there. I mean, Lubavitch invented the idea that everyone has a purpose in this world, and if God made you a Gentile, you should be proud to be a Gentile. If God made you a Jew, I don't even know what that means, being made a Jew. You should be proud to be Jewish. It's silly.
Well, you just made the point of what it means to be Jewish. A baby who's 8 days old, who is born to a Jewish family, that family has to make him a bris, right? Why?
Because it's part of our.
He didn't choose the covenant.
No, right. And what does Chazal say about this, by the way? And there's a specific in Yoma. It says, what do you do with a baby that you find in a non-Jewish city? Right? Like, do you make him a ben or a bat noach? It says, no, you circumcise him and you convert him to Judaism. And the principle they laid down is that you don't need permission to do something beneficial for somebody. So that's the idea. That, of course, if you're in charge of a creation in this world, you should raise them in the best way possible. But to say, oh, well, we adopted a non-Jewish baby, we're not going to encourage Judaism on him because he's a Gentile, right? We're just going to tell him to be a good Gentile. But the Jew has 613 commandments. It means that you view the world in some sort of a bigoted manner.
You disagree with basically the current state of Rabbinic Judaism, which is that basically we need to discourage non-Jewish from becoming Jews until they really, really kind of work at it and show their commitment.
Yes, I do.
And by the way, it's not. Lubavitch might have put it into the forefront. And by the way, I have a lot of experience with Lubavitch. I wouldn't consider myself a Lubavitcher. I wasn't born as a Lubavitcher. I have a lot of respect and learning that has connected with Chabad. But just to make that clear, that I'm not here to defend anybody's agenda.
You're jumping ship now, because you realize that they are bigoted. It's bigoted either way, man.
Who's bigoted? You're saying that Lubavitchers specifically are bigoting? I mean, the whole entire Orthodox world is the same way. The whole entire Orthodox
because they learned
world,
from Chabad. Because they learned from
bullshit.
Yeah.
The whole entire Orthodox world. First of all, they learned from Chabad to be more accepting of Jews who were born Jewish.
Right.
There's never been a
special
recent Jewish
privilege
history that they're more accepting and they want to encourage goyim to convert. I'm pretty sure that it's brought in halakha that we don't encourage.
So there's no halakha, by the way. There's no halakha. I mean, you could look it up later, but I've been doing this long enough that I know there's no halakha to discourage.
So where does that come from?
Kabbalah. It comes from Kabbalah and the Tanya in particular.
The Tanya doesn't speak about Geirut at all.
No, it talks about Gentiles being inherently irredeemable.
No, but that's until
the Jewish neshama.
You're disagreeing with this concept that any person who converts already has a Jewish spark. The Jewish spark.
Correct. I don't believe in that, and that's invented by Kabbalah.
Invented by Kabbalah, but then you're invalidating Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means you're like a choiker. You're saying you're just. In other words, an Orthodox Jew who invalidates Kabbalah is already categorizing themselves in a certain, I don't know, an edge that's.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But you'd have to agree then that the Rambam never speaks about it, the Talmud never speaks about it, the Gaonim never speak about it. This is only post the 13th century. So if you want to separate the world between those who follow Mekubalim and those who don't, then fine. I mean, put me on the one that they don't. I don't think that all of Kabbalah is bad. However, when it redefines the purpose of becoming or remaining Jewish, that's, I mean,
I don't think that you need Kabbalah to come to this conclusion. Let's say the Rambam. I don't have to. Again, you seem like I've learned all of this because I've learned through the Rambam, thank God. But I do remember it being much more easy to convert in the Rambam's words, which is the original halacha of everything. The Rambam is the first one who wrote a whole entire book, a book about all of Jewish law. So it was easier. I don't know if it says in it to be discouraging there, but I don't need Lubavitch or the Zohar to give me a practical like inference that you should discourage people at first to become Jewish, because that's just the nature of history today as well. Again,
no, that's not the issue. The issue I have with
because today people are trying to convert because they have a good Jewish boyfriend.
No, I get it.
Everyone has these side reasons.
I just wish you were more consistent. I wish you were more consistent. If you would say, I'm going to discourage, someone who happens to have a Jewish mother from coming close to Judaism, because I don't know exactly why they want to convert. Like maybe they want to date my religious daughter, right? Or I don't know why they want to do tshuva, right? Unless you're going to say that, but you only limit this to people who don't have Jewish mothers, means that you're giving Judaism this bigoted, image.
You're saying that just as a non-Jew, you have to question them before they want to commit to the covenant.
See, now you sound like a rabbi.
Jews should be questioned and discouraged because they'd also have side reasons for coming to the covenant. Is that what you're saying? Huh?
Chazal say, the way you said it was a very yeshivish way, but yes, absolutely. If you're looking for quantity, or if you're looking for quality over quantity, then do it fairly. Okay, and there are many people who are against kiruv, by the way. I mean, it's not that everyone is on board. Last I heard, Toldos Haran or I don't know, like Malache, like Hasidei Malachim, like don't do kiruv. So it's kiruv is not something that everyone bought into.
But that's what you're speaking about is two sides of your mouth, because you're saying that we should do kiruv to goyim just as much as Jews.
Correct.
Saying now we shouldn't do kiruv to Jews.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I wish that you were consistent either way, but you're not consistent. Like you're saying, give special treatment to Jews or people who happen to be born of Jewish mothers, and in some way discourage people not. All right. I'm just saying that you'd be more consistent if you discouraged all around.
I'm being practical. You encourage Jews because they're already Jewish and they don't have to. But
they're not. They're not religiously Jewish. They don't know anything. A Christian knows more about Jewish ritual than a secular Jew does. Okay, for sure, they know more about the Bible.
Okay, so they know more. So knowing, you're arguing that there's no inherent natural connection.
Because that's where the bigotry comes in. I'm trying to.
I don't think it's bigotry. I think there's certain people born into a tribe, and therefore it would make sense to tend them and to tend to them and to try to bring them into the practices of that tribe, rather than a person who was not born into that tribe.
Okay, if at the end of the day.
But if a person who's not born into that tribe wants to adopt the properties of that tribe, then kol hakavod. Let them do that. That's great.
If at the end of the day, a religious Jew is a religious Jew, who cares what tribe you were born in then?
Yeah. Once you're religious, who cares?
No, that's what 100%. I mean. But you have to cultivate that in
once
people.
Once you're religious, it doesn't matter.
But if you're choosing who you cultivate that in.
But when you're on the way to religion, when you're not religious and you're not Jewish, so I would pick if I would influence somebody to come to the ways of Judaism. It's just, first of all, it's easier for them, and there's, I think, again, even if you're not dealing with their soul being more complete through these practices, they just have an easier way. There's an easier path for them to get into the practices. So I would choose to be mikarev them more than somebody else.
Right. So I think for it to even seem a little fair, like if you're going to send 5 shluchim like, to Rutgers to only focus on Jews, at least send one to focus on Gentiles. But when you send none, right? Like you have a Chabad house next to another Chabad house, basically competing to get more Jews. That's when it looks like, it's not, that form of segregation takes effort.
Judaism to be a proselytizing religion?
Absolutely.
Shit,
I think the Torah is.
Enough shit. We're going to get so much more slack.
Don't you think the world would be a better place if we had more religious Jews?
Honestly, personally, I don't.
That's
and
crazy.
it's not.
And this is why people don't take Jews seriously.
That's the opposite of a Lubavitch.
And this is why Jews don't take seriously.
I lived in very, very Karaite communities, and they're mostly annoying people. So I actually don't want more people to be religious Jews.
Okay.
I'm fine with how many there are, and I do what I can to spiritualize and sensitize people to things which I think are great for me and my perspective. But I don't.
What's your name? What's your name?
My name's Josh Engelson.
Josh. Okay.
My mother's Lebanese. That's why my band name is Cedars of Lebanon.
Oh, interesting. That's very courageous, by the way. Like most people don't give their name. I give mine. This is in Israel. I'm Usher Meza. In America, I'm George Meza. Fine.
Nice.
This is not the first time I've dialogued with Lubavitchers on this issue, and they all basically end up saying the same thing at the end, right? That not necessarily.
Would never say what I just said.
That's not true.
Religious people are annoying, and I don't want more of that.
No, like not that. That if the world would be a better place if we just had more religious Jews, because they know, I'm going to say, a convert is nothing but a religious Jew in training, right? Not to give me the benefit of the doubt, they'll say not necessarily, because if you only view, if within every Gentile you see a Jew fighting to get out, okay, which is what I see, then at the end of the day, you have more religious Jews. Stam, that's it. If the goal is making more Torah in the world, more religious Jews, then you should be encouraging Gentiles to consider coming close to Judaism, just as you would consider unaffiliated Jews from to return to Judaism. You understand? It's only practical and logical. It's Kabbalah that makes people less sophisticated in this argument. Saying, no, only if Jews do tshuva does the world get better. If Gentiles convert, we'll have to see after they die if their good deeds outweigh their bad deeds. It's bigotry all around.
That's not true. First of all, if a Gentile converts based on the Torah and Pshat in Torah, you can't consider them as any different than a Jew who was born Jewish. 100%. That I'm 100% on the line with. I think we definitely philosophically disagree. Listen, the people who I see converting, let's say I'm working with a couple people who are converting. They're just as a mental help, because it's so fucking hard. Sorry for the language, because it's so hard to convert. So, but most of them are people who married Jews. They married Jews, so they want to convert. Which is, listen, some of them come to it because of how hard it is. They actually come to it from an authentic place, and they're real converts. But that's their reasoning. But I don't believe. I just don't believe that they're any. I don't know. I live in Venice Beach. There's a lot of spiritual people around here who practice, who have disciplines that are just as strong as my Jewish disciplines, and I think that they have a connection with God in their way. I think God is everything. Like we say in the Torah, God created the whole world from nothing, and He is the energy and essence of everything. And I think that a lot of the truths that we find in Judaism are, especially in spirituality, are found in a lot of different philosophies and people who are looking for truth. And I think that their midot, their coolness, their character is greater than a lot of Orthodox Jews. That's what I'm saying.
All right, question. Another question.
I lived for 10 years in deep Karaiteville, and I live in other much more secular places, and I don't see the midot so differently. I don't see their character of people so different. I appreciate a lot of times people who are not Jewish practicing in other ways. I only appreciate spiritual people, that's for sure, and people who have worked on themselves, but I think there's a lot of ways to get there, and I don't think I would need to preach Judaism. On the opposite. I'm like, thank God this person's not an Orthodox Jew.
So do you
They're
wish...
Orthodox in their way.
Hold on. Do you wish that the inhabitants of Gaza considered Judaism as an alternative to radicalism?
As an alternative, if that was the only alternative, but honestly, I wish they considered mushrooms.
Come on, man. Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Judaism is not gonna, another radicalist thing is not gonna help. If that's the only alternative, because they have to be
so Orthodox Judaism,
they have to go from radical Islamist to Karaite, then yeah, that's the better alternative, because
I didn't say Karaite
themselves and they don't fight anyone.
Like, I didn't say Karaite. I'm basically saying that we should fight bad religion with good religion. So you do wish that the inhabitants of Gaza converted to a modern form of ethical Judaism, of like ethical Orthodox Judaism, than remain unhappy Muslims.
Yes, I would rather if that's the only alternative. But what I ultimately would rather is for them to get into Zen and
yeah, but we're dealing with reality. You know, like in reality.
No, that I think is a deeper reality. A more considerable reality for Gazans is not to convert to Judaism. That's way more polarized. But is to open their mind and be open, because again, Zionism isn't about Judaism as we established first. It's about basically a better version of politics in that arena, which comes from open-mindedness. Right. I'd rather them be more open-minded than Jewish.
Okay, we're gonna end on that note. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Josh. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. You can call me Cedars.
Okay, no problem. Sorry. You know, Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro used to go to the Young Israel Venice Beach.
Yes. And Michael Medved started the shul here, actually.
Oh, big fan of Michael Medved also. Is he? I mean, he's still on the radio? I don't think he's on the radio.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've heard him as well.
Yeah.
My dad used to play him.
Yeah, he was an Orthodox Jew. He's the only, I guess, before Ben Shapiro, only Orthodox Jew on the radio. Dennis Prager, not Orthodox, but he's
I have to tell you, this is the first time I've actually engaged on TikTok with anybody. Just because I kind of have a rabbinic background and whatever, the politics today, and I'm noticing like people giving me stuff. I don't know, 140. I don't know what. I just would love to know what this means.
I don't know what 140 means.
I have 140 something, 145.
Oh, that's diamonds or. We could cash that out for money.
I did that, but I don't know what does that do for me?
Like you could cash it out for money.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that'll probably give you like around $1. So, and there you go. I mean, you can buy yourself a churro.
I appreciate you, and you definitely have a lot of great points. So
okay, man. Likewise.
Thanks for letting me on.
Amen.
Amen.
Guys, I'm just gonna end the live because it's already. I don't want to get banned. All right, be well.
Be well.
And we're